Chapter 1826, Vulcan's Sigh. After Shi Feng left, all of the various large guilds members visibly relaxed. Black Flame is leaving just like that? He doesn't intend to deal with Blackwater's members? My guess is that Black Flame finds it beneath him to deal with them. I've watched the battles that occurred at the primordial divine ruin. Black Flame had soloed a mythic monster. Then he sent both Blackwater's army and the evil beast army running with their tails tucked between their legs. A measly 1,000-man elite team probably isn't worth his effort. Black Flame is too strong. His presence alone was enough to make the various large guilds shrink back with fear. It's no wonder why Black Flame is recognized as Starmoon Kingdom's #1 expert. He is far stronger than those famous peak experts. The adventurer teams watching from a short distance away were shocked when they looked at the various guild players, who watched the departing convoy cautiously. They had never thought that the presence of a single player would be enough to deter so many guild players. They had all heard many rumors about Black Flame, but they had assumed the rumors were jokes and baseless assertions. However, they simply treated those rumors as jokes and baseless assertions. However, after seeing the man in person today, they finally understood that the rumors were actually true. In fact, Black Flame was even scarier than the rumors made him out to be. Because of this discovery, many of these independent players, who hadn't been interested in joining any guild, began to have second thoughts. They all considered joining Zero Wing, especially the Swordsman players. This was especially true for Swordsman players. Unbeknownst to Shi Feng, his casual action of sparing Blackwater's members had made many independent players in the Orc Empire reconsider their position about joining his guild. At the same time, news of Shi Feng's appearance in the Orc Empire had reached the various dark players hiding in the Empire. "Commander, we have discovered Black Flame." "Where?" "He's near the Orc Empire's border. However, there are quite a number of NPCs moving with him. Taking him out won't be easy. Follow after him for now. I'll gather our members and head over as soon as possible. As long as our Wind's Arrow adventurer team kills Black Flame once, we'll qualify to join Dark Soul. We cannot miss this opportunity, so follow him closely." Understood. The various dark adventurer teams operating within the Orc Empire began to make their way towards Shi Feng. Some time ago, the Dark Knight Empire's Dark Soul had placed a bounty on Zero Wing. For each Zero Wing upper echelon killed, one could earn a dark mutation slot. If one managed to kill Zero Wing's guild leader, regardless of whether an individual or an entire team completed the task, both would be welcome to join Dark Soul. Individuals would be given command of a new adventurer team in Dark Soul. To players that operated in the Dark Soul's reputation was equivalent to that of a super guild. Joining the Dark Alliance and become one of its commander-level figures was no different than becoming the vice-guild leader in a super guild. Why wouldn't such an offer be tempting? The various dark adventurer teams and several dark guilds began an enthusiastic search for Black Flame. Although Black Flame was very powerful, even giants would fall against overwhelming numbers. God's Domain also had many special methods to kill players. Dark Soul had not specified a requirement to defeat Black Flame with raw strength. The lightning-horned earth dragons dashed down the Orc Empire's gravel roads. As Shi Feng ventured deeper into the Orc Empire, stronger monsters and orcs showed up to hinder his progress. Initially, most of the monsters had only been chieftains, but now lords began to target his caravan. If not for the lightning-horned earth dragons being level 80 great lords, the monsters in their way would have stopped the caravan long ago. Sure enough, it really is difficult to set up a trade rule in a land ruled by the dark forces. Shi Feng inwardly celebrated as he watched one lord-ranked orc get knocked aside after another. Fortunately, he was the first player to set up a trade route in Starmoon Kingdom and had the privilege of using the lightning-horned earth dragons. Normally, players would only have access to mysterious iron transport carriages, which were only pulled by lord-ranked monsters, when setting up a trade route. Traveling through a neutral map under the Dark Forces rule with such carriages would be extremely difficult. He would have had to stop his progress whenever he was attacked. In that case, he would have had to rely on the NPCs he had hired to clear a path or dispatch a large number of his guild members to do so. With the lightning-horned earth dragons, however, he could simply bulldoze his way through. Though, due to the large number of orcs and monsters blocking his path, his advance had slowed considerably. Now the transport carriages only moved a little faster than players running at full speed. Meanwhile, this was only the beginning of the Dark Forces territory. As Shi Feng traveled deeper into the Empire, he would encounter more numerous and powerful orcs and monsters, which even the Tier 3 NPCs accompanying him would have some trouble with. After about 8 hours, Shifeng arrived before an orc fortress. According to the system map, the fortress was the final point for the trade route. This quest. Does it really want me to build the expulsion magic array inside the fortress? As Shifeng watched the patrolling orcs on the fortress's walls, he wondered if he had read his system map wrong. This was nothing like the orcs he had faced on the road earlier. On his way here, he had faced wild orcs or orc patrols, but these orcs were members of the Orc Empire's well-trained army. Fortunately, due to his quest, the fortress only had around 3,000 orc guards, far fewer than normal. In return, however, their levels and rank had increased significantly. Now, the weakest orc guarding the fortress was a chieftain, with the majority of the orcs being lords. The leader of these creatures was even a level 80 mythic-ranked orc general. After spotting Shifeng's caravan, the orc general raised its greatsword with one hand and loosed a furious roar. Suddenly, the army of 3,000 orcs stationed inside the fortress flooded out of the fortress's gates and marched toward Shifeng's caravan. Sturdy, shield-wielding orcs occupied the front line while agile, bow-wielding orcs moved at the rear. The orc army's approach even made the NPCs with Shifeng nervous. Shifeng could see well over 100 Great Lord-ranked orcs and over a dozen Grand Lords. This force was on an entirely different level than the caravan's contingent. As Shifeng wondered if something had gone awry, the sound of a system notification reached his ears. System, you have triggered the epic trade route quest Orc King's Ambitions. You may choose to accept or abandon this quest. If you complete this quest, you will receive a commendation from Starmoon Kingdom and qualify to build an airport. Abandoning this quest will not affect your original trade route quest. If you choose to abandon this quest, the system will designate an alternative path for the trade route. You have 3 minutes to consider. An epic trade route quest? Shifeng was stunned when he read the system notification, but after seeing the quest rewards, he couldn't help his growing excitement. Could this be the reward for being the first player to set up a trade route? The qualifications to build an airport. Countless guilds and neutral maps dreamed of acquiring this qualification, but very few succeeded in doing so. In the past, not a single guild had revealed how they had managed it. Meanwhile, the sensational scene at the Orc Fortress stupefied the various dark adventurer teams and dark guilds following Shifeng. Crap. What's going on? Is Black Flame trying to raid the fortress? Does he intend to raid a fortress by himself? Is he crazy? Black Flame is insane. That's an orc fortress we're talking about. Although he can stand against a mythic monster for some time, capturing a fortress is a different story entirely. Even if he has some NPCs to support him, ambushing a fortress is impossible. As the dark players watched the distance between the orc army and Shifeng's caravan decrease, they were dumbfounded. They had watched many guilds try to raid one of the Orc Empire's fortresses before, but this was the first time they had seen a single player attempt it. Commander, what should we do? Should we attack Black Flame? These orcs are too high-leveled. Moreover, there's a mythic orc among them. If we attack carelessly, we might get dragged into the fight. Let's wait. It won't be too late to take action once the orc army pushes Black Flame and his NPCs back. All of the dark adventurer teams and dark guilds following Shifeng came to the same decision. Meanwhile, as the orc army approached the caravan, Shifeng and his NPCs prepared for battle. Let's give it a try, Shifeng decided after analyzing his current combat power and the challenge. The quest had only mentioned that he needed to set up an expulsion magic array in the fortress, not capture the fortress. There was a huge difference between the two tasks. Naturally, the former was far easier. Moreover, this was a valuable opportunity. It would be a huge waste to give it up. Grinding his teeth, Shifeng accepted the quest. He then pulled a magic scroll with crimson divine runes from his bag. This magic scroll was none other than the Tier 4 continuous use magic scroll, Vulcan Sigh, which he had acquired from the gold magic crystal treasure chest in the Eclipse throne. The magic scroll was even more valuable than ordinary epic equipment. Vulcan Sigh was also an extremely rare summoning scroll. He had hoped to save the scroll as a trump card for any future guild wars, but using it to complete this epic trade route quest was worth the expenditure. Following which, Shifeng injected 1,000 magic crystals of mana into the magic scroll and activated it. In the next moment, a crimson, threefold magic array manifested beneath Shifeng's feet. The sky also began to transform and the earth started to quake. Why did the sky suddenly go dark? Everyone noticed dark clouds block out the sun. A moment later the space around Shifeng began to freeze. The spectating dark players felt a powerful aura assault their minds and bodies. Chapter 1827, Battle of Monsters. As the dusky space froze, over 24 magic arrays appeared in the cloudy sky, radiating a light that illuminated the orc fortress and its surroundings. As these magic arrays manifested, the dark players felt their aura's intensity increase, making their bodies feel much heavier than a moment ago. As the heavy feeling grew, they began to panic. What's going on? Why can't I move? What did Black Flame do? Everyone quickly discovered that they couldn't even move a finger, much less walk away. They felt as if time had stopped. Moreover, they weren't the only ones subjected to this phenomenon. Even the orc army had fallen deathly silent. Some orcs had even lost strength to stand and fell to a knee, terrified. Following which, the sky shattered and formed a massive black hole. If one looked closely, they would notice a pair of flaming eyes as large as small mountains within the black hole. As these eyes appeared, the pressure on the players present increased yet again. Immediately, all of the orcs, including the mythic ranked orc general, slumped to the ground and shuddered in fear. What's going on? It's over. We're doomed. Damn it. This must be a trap Black Flame set up. We've been tricked. As the dark players looked up at the massive pair of eyes, they sensed their impending death and destruction. They weren't even ants before the owner of those eyes. As long as the creature willed it, its aura alone would slay these players. It wouldn't even need to attack. The players from the various dark adventurer teams and dark guilds suddenly regretted their decision to target Shifeng. Just as everyone cowered before their doom, the pair of flaming orbs vanished abruptly before fire began to pour from the black hole, raining down on the orc empire like meteors. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions shook the orc fortress in the area. The ground trembled so violently that the dark players, who stood quite a distance away, nearly lost their footing. The shower of fire continued for 6 seconds, transforming the earth under the orc army into a burning hellscape. By the time flames stopped pouring out of the black hole, the chieftain-ranked orcs had been wiped out while the lord sustained heavy injuries. The several thousand dark players gasped when they saw this outcome. With one attack, Shifeng had obliterated half of the entire orc army. However, before the crowd could recover from their shock, the fire on the battlefield converged and transformed into easily over 100 flame giants. The weakest among these flame giants was a level 80 High Lord, whereas the strongest 5 were level 82 Grand Lords. Vulcan's Sigh is actually so powerful? Even Shifeng was astonished as he gazed at the flame giants. He had assumed that he'd be lucky to summon even one Grand Lord. He had never expected for Vulcan's Sigh to summon such a powerful legion of flame giants. After the single activation of Vulcan's Sigh, Shifeng noticed that the magic scroll had lost half of its durability. In other words, Vulcan's Sigh was a continuous-use magic scroll that could only be used twice. Moreover, he would have to wait 2 natural days before he could use the scroll again. He could not use it consecutively. However, Shifeng was very satisfied with the result. Although most Tier 4 continuous-use magic scrolls could be used 4 to 6 times, their effects couldn't compare to Vulcan's Sigh. The Flame Legion's arrival instantly disrupted the orc army's formation. The 20-meter-tall Grand Lord-ranked flame giants sent over a dozen orcs flying with a single slap. In terms of strength, even the Grand Lord-ranked orc warriors were no match for the Grand Lord-ranked flame giants. For a time, the legion of flame giants brought chaos to the orc army. The battle between the flame giants and orcs was earth-shattering. Sounds of slaughter and explosions echoed across the barren plains that surrounded the orc fortress, stupefying the dark players that hid in the distant forest. Although the battle only involved several thousand monsters, it was no less intense than a battle between tens of thousands of players. If players joined this fight, even the shockwaves from the orcs and flame giants clashing would vaporize them. While the orc army tangled with the Flame Legion, Shifeng used the opportunity to lead his NPC mercenaries past the orc army and towards the orc fortress. He did not need to exterminate the orc army to capture the fortress. He only needed to set up the expulsion magic array inside of it. Moreover, Shifeng did not think that he could defeat the orc army. The army was led by a mythic orc after all. Although the flame giants were powerful, a mythic ranked creature could easily suppress them. Furthermore, the Flame Legion was badly outnumbered. It was only a matter of time before the orcs wiped the legion out. When Shifeng was within 500 yards of the fortress, the level 80 orc general discovered his group. With a roar, the Orc general raised its greatsword, firing a chilling beam attack at the Grand Lord-ranked flame giant before it. The attack sent the flame giant flying back as a layer of ice formed on the ground before the Orc general. The mythic orc then led a group of subordinates as they ran down the icy path its attack had created to block the fortress's entrance with their bodies. Other orcs also began to abandon their fights with the flame giants, charging towards Shifeng's group. Sure enough, they won't let me through so easily. Shifeng smiled bitterly as he looked at the orc general before the fortress's entrance. He then turned toward Anna and ordered, "Do it." Nodding, Anna began to chant as she approached the orc general. When less than 100 yards separated the two, Anna finished her spell and pointed her staff at the orc general. Suddenly, a level 85 Tier 4 Valkyrie descended from the sky. Using an advanced instantaneous movement, the Valkyrie instantly appeared before the orc general and swept the lightning spear in her hands at the mythic orc. Boom. Failing to react in time to the strike, the orc general and a dozen or so great lord-ranked orcs got sent flying over 100 yards to the side. The Valkyrie's frightening strength had even shattered the ground before her, creating a small ravine. Good. Shifeng then led his group into the fortress, commanding his NPC mercenaries to guard the entrance while he headed for the system-designated location to set up the expulsion magic array. The fortress's entrance wasn't particularly large. 20 NPCs would be more than enough to form a barricade. Fortunately, the fortress's walls had been enhanced with magic runes, and not even mythic monsters would be able to jump over them. Now, the orcs could only enter the fortress if they destroyed its walls or the NPCs guarding the entrance. The fortress walls were quite sturdy, and it would even take a mythic monster some time to destroy them. By the time the orc general created an opening, Shifeng would have long since completed his task. The only way the orc general could get into the fortress before Shifeng finished was through the main entrance. Hence, stationing guards would be enough. Very quickly, Shifeng found the targeted location. Wasting no time, he immediately took out a large, blue crystal from his epic-ranked spatial bag and began to engrave the expulsion magic array. As the seconds ticked by, more orcs tried to force their way into the fortress. The Tier 2 NPCs defending the entrance began to die, one after another. Only the Tier 3 NPCs barely held their ground against the Grand Lord-ranked orc warriors. The Valkyrie fought a fierce battle against the orc general outside of the building, doing her best to injure the mythic orc. Meanwhile, the orc general was utterly powerless to stop the beating. Although the orc general was a level 80 mythic-ranked creature, the Valkyrie was a level 85 mythic-ranked angel. There was a massive difference between the two beings' life ratings. The Valkyrie completely overpowered the orc general, and it took everything it had just to block the Valkyrie's attacks. Occasionally the orc general slipped up, and the Valkyrie's attacks sent it flying. The watching dark players were flabbergasted. The various commanders and upper echelons from the dark adventurer teams and dark guilds wiped the sweat from their foreheads. They inwardly celebrated the fact that they hadn't rushed to attack Shifeng. The consequences would have been unimaginably dire. By the time the Valkyrie disappeared, the orc general was heavily injured, greatly reducing its combat power. Now it was only slightly more powerful than the Grand Lord-ranked orc warriors. I need to hurry. When Shifeng saw the orc general attack the guards at the entrance, he began to inscribe runes faster. 20 seconds, 40 seconds, 60 seconds. Once the orc general rejoined the fight, more NPC mercenaries began to fall. In just 60 seconds, over 10 Tier 2 NPCs had died. One of the Tier 3 NPCs had even sustained heavy injuries. When there were fewer than 30 NPC mercenaries remaining, the orc general used a powerful skill and charged past the blockade. Upon entering the fortress and spotting Shifeng, the orc general roared and swung its greatsword at the offending swordsman. Suddenly, a cold energy beam shot toward Shifeng and everything it passed froze. While inscribing the magic array, Shifeng couldn't move without canceling the inscription process. He'd have to start all over again. Hence, Shifeng had no choice but to activate absolute defense. After the energy beam disappeared, everything except for Shifeng's immediate surroundings had frozen solid. When the orc general saw that Shifeng had survived, it was further enraged. It charged up to Shifeng, brandishing its greatsword. Despite the fact that the power of the orc general's attacks shattered the ground around him, Shifeng remained unharmed. However, his heart pounded with nervous energy rather than feeling relieved. Just when Absolute Domain's duration was about to end, the blue crystal in Shifeng's hand suddenly lit up. He had finally finished inscribing the magic array. Go! Shifeng shoved the crystal into the ground before him. As the crystal melded with the ground, a magic array appeared beneath Shifeng's feet. Seeing this, Shifeng activated Heavenly Dragon's power, his attributes skyrocketing. Scram! Shifeng yelled as he swung Killing Ray at the Orc General. Lightning slash! A blue lightning bolt struck the Orc General, and like a cannonball, the creature flew backward, only stopping when it crashed into a nearby wall. Using this opportunity, Anna had her 10 rock guardians form a magic array around the Orc General, trapping the mythic orc. Meanwhile, Shifeng took out several small crystals for the magic array's finishing touches. Since Shifeng was now very familiar with the process, he only needed 10 seconds to complete the array. As the magic array completed, a blue ripple of light enveloped the war fortress. A moment later, a series of system notifications reached Shifeng's ears. Chapter 1828, Advanced Manager. System, congratulations. You have completed the epic trade route quest Orc King's Ambitions. Rewarding Starmoon Kingdom reputation plus 100 plus 50% EXP of current level, and 1 Starmoon Kingdom airport building order. Orc Empire Region System Announcement. Congratulations to Zero Wing Silverwing Town for becoming the first town in the Orc Empire to set up a trade route. Rewarding 10,000 popularity points to Silverwing Town and 1 transportation firm design. The system announcement echoed 3 times in the ears of every player within the Orc Empire. Set up a trade route? What's that? It should be something that can lure in more NPC merchants. If that's true, doesn't that mean we can obtain even more rare items from the NPCs of Silverwing Town now? Zero Wing is really amazing. Silverwing Town got promoted into an intermediate town just recently. Now, Zero Wing has even managed to set up a trade route for it. The Orc Empire will definitely fall under Zero Wing's dominion in the future. That's for sure. Previously, the Evil Beast army was already helpless against Zero Wing. With how rapidly Silverwing Town is developing right now, I believe it will surpass Ancient Rock City before long. It would be great if that's the case. If Silverwing Town really does surpass Ancient Rock City, we won't have to worry about getting ambushed by dark players when grinding in the Orc Empire's outer area. The players grinding in the Orc Empire promptly started a discussion about Zero Wing. They all held an optimistic view of Zero Wing's future. At the same time, they also hoped that Silverwing Town could develop quickly. For some reason, Ancient Rock City had actually become a mecca for the dark forces. A large number of dark players was currently gathered there. Since Ancient Rock City was located in the Orc Empire's inner area, the dark players' main sphere of activity encompassed the Orc Empire's inner area and the boundary between the inner and outer areas. As a result, the independent players trying to grind and do quests in these areas frequently came under attack from dark players. As for Silverwing Town, which was the town closest to Ancient Rock City, while it could be considered a mecca for normal players like themselves, as the town could accommodate only a very limited number of people, not that many players gathered around the town. Hence, the number of normal players operating within the vicinity of Silverwing Town was relatively low, far from enough to contend against the dark players operating around Ancient Rock City. However, if Silverwing Town were developed further, the number of players gathering at the town would also increase. The influx of normal players would naturally pose a deterrent to the dark players. At the very least, they would refrain from boldly launching attacks in large numbers. Although the news of Silverwing Town setting up a trade route brought joy to the independent players operating within the Orc Empire, somber expressions appeared on the faces of the various major powers' upper echelons when they received this piece of news. At this point in time, the number of players willing to operate within the Orc Empire had already peaked. In other words, the player population within the Orc Empire would no longer increase significantly like before. Meanwhile, the various major powers that had captured a town within the Orc Empire all needed to lure more players to their towns to develop their towns. However, if most of the players operating within the Empire were heading to Silverwing Town, how were these major powers supposed to develop their own guild towns? Wind, with this recent development, the Ancient Rock City you're managing is in for a tough time, Falling Fire, who held a crystalline crimson staff, said when he heard the latest system announcement. A grin appeared on his face as he turned to look at the level 55, Tier 2 Berserker standing beside him. To begin with, we only joined hands with the dark players to use their strength to whittle down Zero Wing. This change will bring no loss to the evil god's temple, Wind Hunter said indifferently. Moreover, no matter how Zero Wing develops Silverwing Town, it is already too late. Don't you agree? Indeed. While Zero Wing's black flame is indeed very scary, unfortunately for him, a guild can't become strong just by relying on one person. At the end of the day, a war between guilds is decided by the financial strength and foundations both sides possess, Falling Fire said as he looked at the Crimson Flame Fortress, whose defensive magic array had already been shattered. We'll let Zero Wing maintain its arrogance for now. As long as we capture the Crimson Flame Fortress, Zero Wing's existence will be over. The Crimson Flame Fortress was one of the most important fortresses within the Orc Empire's inner area. It was also one of the relatively safe transport hubs in the Empire. Capturing the Crimson Flame Fortress would be equivalent to taking control of the majority of the players heading to the regional dungeon Orc capital city. The amount of coins and resources they could earn from the fortress would easily surpass that from ancient Rock City at its peak. At the same time, their control of the Crimson Flame Fortress would essentially allow them to bar Zero Wing from entering the Orc capital city. This would render all of Zero Wing's efforts in the Orc Empire useless. In the long run, their alliance would grow increasingly stronger in the Orc Empire, whereas Zero Wing would weaken. After accumulating sufficient strength, they could then capture Silverwing Town and destroy Zero Wing, permanently relegating the guild to history. Elsewhere, due to Sure Fong completing the expulsion magic array, the Orc army trying to kill him was subjected to a powerful pressure from the magic array. Even the Orc general's reactions turned sluggish under the pressure, allowing the swordsman to evade the Orc general's attacks, albeit barely. Just as Sure Fong was trying to think of a way to escape, a series of war cries suddenly came from outside the fortress. In the next moment, an army of NPCs suddenly appeared roughly 1,000 yards away from the fortress and charged toward it. Although there were only 1,000 NPCs in this army, they were all very high-leveled, at least level 100. In God's domain, level 50 was a major turning point. Likewise, level 100 was also a very important turning point. A level 100 Tier 2 NPC would make short work of a level 95 Great Lord. Meanwhile, among the NPCs galloping over, the weakest one was a level 100 Tier 2 NPC. Claude, the NPC leading the charge, was even a level 120 Tier 3 Knight Captain. Although Claude was only Tier 3, he was not in the same league as ordinary Tier 3 NPCs, because Claude was fully equipped in epic equipment. The silver spear he wielded was even a fragmented legendary weapon. His combat power was no doubt at the peak of Tier 3. He could even go toe-to-toe with ordinary Tier 4 mythic monsters. Shortly after these NPCs appeared, they quickly engaged the Orc army in battle. Riding atop a one-horned beast, Claude swung his spear at the Orc warriors that were trying to force their way through the entrance. Claude's spear transformed into a silver streak of light, tearing a hole through space as it swept at the Orc warriors. 2 level 80 Grand Lord ranked Orc warriors went flying. Meanwhile, the Lord ranked Orcs, which were caught in the crossfire, were killed on the spot. In the blink of an eye, Claude cut open a path in the Orc army and charged straight into the fortress. Reinforcements? Sure Fong was both joyful and confused at Claude's appearance. He had never thought that the system would provide such a service after he completed his quest. In the eyes of a level 120 Tier 3 NPC, the level 80 mythic ranked Orc general was no different from a common monster with a lot of HP. Claude sent the Orc general flying with every one of his attacks. As Claude and the Orc general clashed, the Orc general's HP continuously decreased. When the Orc general's HP fell to 50%, the mythic Orc let loose a frustrated and indignant roar. In the next moment, the battling Orc army started retreating. As for the Orc general, it too backed up to the top of a fortress wall, then jumped off and escaped. After the Orc army fled, Claude approached Sure Fong. Lord Protector, thanks to your efforts, we were able to set up this important trade route. From now onward, Starmoon Kingdom's army will be managing this place to assure the trade route's security. Meanwhile, as you are the pioneer of this trade route, are you willing to pay 60,000 gold to repair this secret stone fortress and become its advanced manager? Chapter 1829, Secret Stone Fortress. Advanced Manager? Sure Fong was ecstatic upon hearing Claude's words. In God's domain, becoming a fortress town's manager was akin to becoming a noble of an NPC town or city. Players would gain the authority to manage a portion of the shops in the fortress town and would be able to determine its development direction. However, an NPC fortress town wouldn't have only one manager. Just like Thunder Island, there could be multiple managers overseeing a single fortress town. An advanced manager possessed more authority than a basic manager. An advanced manager was close to being the deputy mayor of a fortress town. They would be able to manage important establishments such as the auction house, teleportation hall, and adventurers association, not just a bunch of shops. Although becoming an advanced manager was inferior to fully occupying a fortress town, since an NPC fortress town would be partially operated and guarded by NPCs, barring special situations, it was much safer than a guild fortress town. For example, currently, so long as the secret stone fortress was being garrisoned by level 100 NPCs, even if Beast Emperor sent his entire evil beast army over, he wouldn't be able to take down the fortress. Unless Beast Emperor had some way to reduce the garrisoned NPCs' levels, capturing the fortress would be impossible. Lord Claude, must the 60,000 gold be paid right now? Shifeng asked. 60,000 gold was no small sum. This was especially true for Shifeng right now, as he had already spent most of his funds on this expedition. 60,000 gold is indeed a lot of money. Moreover, it'll take some time to get the necessary materials to repair the secret stone fortress, Claude said, nodding. It'll take 4 days at the quickest for the kingdom's army to arrive. It is fine so long as you gather the 60,000 gold within these 4 days. System. You have triggered the quest Secret Stone Fortress. Collect 60,000 gold within 4 days. Failure to do so will result in the loss of the opportunity to become Secret Stone Fortress's advanced manager. Wonderful. Shifeng breathed out a sigh of relief upon seeing the system notification. While it might be difficult for ordinary first-rate guilds to collect 60,000 gold in 4 days, some might even have to sell some of their lands to do so, this was not a problem for Shifeng. After all, he had a business deal with the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion and Unyielding Soul. Both these super first-rate guilds had shown great interest in the Dark Corrosion set. They had also placed an order for a large number of all-round devices and elven silver. If he offered to let the two guilds pay for a portion of the all-round devices and elven silver using coins, instead of magic crystals, the two guilds would definitely be more than happy to do so. After Shifeng was done speaking with Claude, he immediately left for Silverwing town. While collecting 60,000 gold in 4 days posed no problem, the money he needed amounted to far more than just 60,000 gold. After completing the Orc King's Ambitions quest, he had acquired the extremely precious Star Moon Kingdom Airport building order as well as a transportation firm design. Both these items were priceless treasures. The Star Moon Kingdom Airport building order was akin to a permit to open up an air route. However, he would need a lot of funds to build an airport. Fortunately, the construction of the airport did not require a design, only money. Even so, building a small airport still cost 50,000 gold. However, once he set up an air route from Starmoon Kingdom to Silverwing Town, not only would it expedite the transport of NPC merchants' goods, but players from Starmoon Kingdom would also have an easier time getting to Silverwing Town. Although air travel wasn't as fast as teleportation, it was still many times faster than traveling on land on a mount. Moreover, the transportation fee one had to pay was also much cheaper than that for a teleportation array. In the past, a large part of the reason why many superpowers were able to develop their neutral towns into an advanced city was their possession of an airport. Although many first-rate guilds possessed great financial strength, the neutral towns they developed only managed to reach the basic city standard. They simply couldn't become an advanced city no matter what. Only the first-rate guilds that succeeded in building an airport were able to develop their neutral towns to the advanced city standard. This was because an airport was capable of bringing a town or city immense popularity and prosperity. Not only could an airport help NPC merchants enter a town or city much more easily, but it also provided the ability to transport cargoes safely and swiftly. A delivery trip that normally took 1 or 2 days by land could be completed in just a few hours by airship. Moreover, in God's domain, some NPC trading firms restricted their development to towns and cities with airports. In addition, there was the recruitment of NPC soldiers. As neutral maps were located very far away from human civilization, many NPCs were unwilling to travel to neutral towns and cities. However, if a neutral town had an airport, the number and quality of NPCs willing to work as a soldier for that town would also increase. With this, the improvement of the neutral town's security level would accelerate. Due to this reason, the development speed of a neutral town with an airport far surpassed that of a neutral town without an airport. This was also the reason why Shifeng had decided to undertake the Orc King's Ambitions quest no matter what. As for the transportation firm, its construction cost 20,000 gold. The transportation firm was something that would be of great help to the players developing in the town where the firm was based. Once he constructed it in Silverwing Town, players would be able to pick up transportation quests in Silverwing Town. When players completed these quests, they could not only obtain a large sum of coins but also accumulate transportation firm contribution points. Players could then spend the CPs and coins they earned to purchase items that were exclusively traded between NPCs. To players that were incapable of raiding high-difficulty team dungeons, this was a good opportunity to acquire top-tier weapons, equipment, and tools. In the past, the transportation firm was actually much more popular than even the auction house. Normally, NPC auction houses hosted auctions only once a week. However, the transportation firm would stock up on new items every day. Moreover, the more prosperous the town or city a transportation firm was based in, the better the quality of the items sold. Hence, in the past, any guild town or city that housed a transportation firm had become a holy land for independent players. Meanwhile, the airport and transportation firm would complement each other. If he could build both in Silverwing Town now, he might not even need a month to upgrade Silverwing Town into an advanced town. However, building these two constructions would cost an astronomical number of coins. Hence, he needed to take action as soon as possible. The moment Shifeng exited the secret stone fortress, the members of the various dark adventurer teams and dark guilds immediately shifted their gaze to him. "Commander, should we move out now?" a level 54 assassin asked, licking his lips as he turned to look at the level 54, Tier 2 ranger standing beside him. The other adventurer teams and guilds seemed to be getting ready to take action as well. After the battle with the orcs ended, the NPCs following Shifeng had also disappeared. The various dark players hiding in the forest grew restless at this development. Although they had seen Black Flame's strength, the remuneration offered by Dark Soul was simply too tempting, so much so that they were willing to risk attacking Black Flame. After all, so long as they succeeded, what awaited them was a life of glory and financial security. Chapter 1830 Shocking Retreat. Hearing the words of the assassin, the other players belonging to the same dark adventurer team started looking around curiously. Just like the assassin had said, their adventurer team wasn't the only one taking action. The members of the 24 or so other adventurer teams and several dark guilds around them had also started sneaking closer to Shifeng. It was obvious that these dark adventurer teams and dark guilds were growing impatient. In God's domain, the dark forces were constantly oppressed. During the early stages of the game, players belonging to the dark forces had a much more difficult time getting by than normal players. After all, the dark forces were still incapable of contending against the various kingdoms and empires right now. Meanwhile, dark adventurer teams and dark guilds with the potential to become a superpower were extremely rare. The conditions to join one such power were extremely stringent. Powers like Dark Soul, which was as strong as a superpower and also offered its members the freedom of an adventurer team, were even rarer. Joining Dark Soul would definitely bring plenty of benefits to their future development. They also wouldn't have to worry about getting hunted just because they killed the members of certain guilds. Moreover, they could grind in the high-resource maps occupied by Dark Soul and not make do in poor maps. "Commander?" The assassin could not help but call out to the silent Tier 2 ranger once again. "If we don't make a move now, I'm afraid we'll lose this chance to the other adventurer teams." "Fine. In for a penny, in for a pound. Even if we fail, at worst we'll lose a level. If we succeed, we'll become members of Dark Soul in the future and instantly join the upper ranks of the dark forces," the gruff man carrying an exquisite crystalline longbow said, nodding. A hint of killing intent flashed across his eyes as he looked at Shifeng. Dark players had a much more difficult time getting by than normal players. The difficulty of finding a strong support to rely on as a dark player was also much greater than what normal players faced when trying to join the various superpowers. Now that there was an opportunity to join Dark Soul, how could he possibly let this chance get away? When the 24 or so members of the adventurer team heard their commander's words, they immediately revealed fierce expressions. They then followed their commander and slowly inched their way toward Shifeng. At this moment, aside from this one adventurer team, the several thousand other dark players hiding in the forest were also entering a combat-ready state. Some stealthed assassins had even gotten within 200 yards of Shifeng already. "Black Flame has many means of escaping. We must not let him get away from us. First, form an encirclement around him. Then use war bondage to trap him here. Once the battle starts, use your silencing skills on him right away. We must finish him in the first exchange." A level 54, Tier 2 assassin clad in dark gray robes said to the 30-plus assassins around him through the team chat. As long as we kill Black Flame, everyone in our Poison Blade Guild will get to join Dark Soul. Then we'll be able to live like kings in the Dark Knight Empire. We won't need to fear even super first-rate guilds. When their leader said that, the eyes of the 30-plus level 53 and level 54 assassins glowed with excitement. Their guild, Poison Blade, was a relatively ordinary dark guild in the Dark Knight Empire. Normally they could fight only second and third-rate guilds. When facing first-rate guilds they had no choice but to run away. As for super first-rate guilds, these existences were no different from gods to them. Let alone provoking one, they didn't even dare to come into contact with one. When they thought about how they wouldn't need to fear Crimson Emperor and Unyielding Soul after joining Dark Soul, they could not help but feel excited. As they entertained visions of such a future, their footsteps as they approached Shifeng became much lighter than before. Their auras also became gentler. At this moment, one could say that their focus had reached unprecedented levels. Only Shifeng existed in their eyes right now. 150 yards. 100 yards. 80 yards. As these assassins closed in on Shifeng's rear, they also grew increasingly nervous. When the assassins were within 50 yards of Shifeng, a low voice suddenly entered everyone's ears and echoed loudly in everyone's mind. Scram. Before anyone could react, Shifeng abruptly turned around and unsheathed Killing Ray. He then swung the sacred sword at the air before him. Suddenly, countless arcs of lightning formed before Shifeng and joined together to form a blue river. Like a primordial beast, the blue river of lightning scorched everything in its path, spreading out in a cone covering an 80-yard radius. Before the stealthed assassins could even react, countless arcs of lightning had already devoured their bodies. After a brief moment of exposure, the assassins' bodies then transformed into streaks of light and disappeared from the area. As the lightning river gradually dissipated, the other dark players who were still a distance away could not help but gasp. In just one hit, Shifeng had killed over 70 stealthed assassins. Right now, numerous pieces of shiny equipment littered the scorched ground. Meanwhile, due to Shifeng's sudden attack, the footsteps and breathing of the other stealthed assassins turned chaotic, their bodies becoming exposed to everyone. This is the Sword King's strength? A Tier 2 assassin wearing dark gray leather armor gulped in fear as he looked at the scorched ground that was just a few centimeters beside him. Compared to the players hiding in the distance, he had managed to get a much clearer view of Shifeng's attack just now. From the moment Shifeng started activating a skill until the time the skill had fully activated, he, a Tier 2 assassin, had actually failed to react by the time he realized Shifeng had attacked. The blue river was already shooting out from Shifeng's sword. Moreover, despite him being able to clearly see the approach of the blue river, his body had been unable to react at all. This situation was just too frightening. His mind could not process how Shifeng had executed such an attack. An ordinary expert player might not understand the implications of such a situation, but he did. The requirement for activating a life-saving skill was for players to think the skill's name. Only after doing so would the life-saving skill activate. However, if one could attack a player before the said player could have such a thought in their mind, then even having the most powerful life-saving skill in the game would be meaningless. In other words, Shifeng could kill an assassin, the class that was famed for having the most life-saving skills, in one attack whenever he wanted. This discovery instantly crushed any thoughts the assassin in dark gray leather armor had of fighting Shifeng. In reality though, Shifeng's inconceivable attack wasn't entirely impossible to block, especially for experts who understood the principles of the Realms of Truth. This was because the move Shifeng had just executed applied the Realms of Truth's basics, moving the body before moving the mind. Unless one trained arduously to go up against attacks executed using such quick reaction speeds, reacting to such an attack was simply impossible. After executing Lightning Edge, Shifeng took a look at everyone present. Upon seeing no new challengers moving up to him, he sheathed Killing Ray before turning around and leaving. Due to Shifeng's attack, the remaining 100-plus assassins no longer dared to approach him. They simply stood still as they watched him leave the battlefield. Guild leader Black Flame is leaving. Are we still not moving? A level 54 Tier 2 shield warrior could not help but ask as he looked at the level 54 Tier 2 ranger beside him. You want to go? Be my guest, the Tier 2 ranger said, rolling his eyes at the shield warrior. The Tier 2 shield warrior shrank his neck back instinctively and shook his head. The fact that he was able to get promoted to Tier 2 at this stage of the game proved that his combat standard was much better than ordinary experts. However, Black Flame's attack inspired dread even in him. He definitely wasn't confident of blocking the attack Black Flame executed just now. Meanwhile, even after Shifeng's figure disappeared from the battlefield, the thousands of dark players remained standing quietly at their original positions with pale expressions. Some independent players that were passing by the area were stupefied when they saw this scene. Too strong. With just one attack, Shifeng had deterred several thousand dark players from making a move. By the time the dark players retreated from the area, news about the battle had already been spread like mad on the official forums by the independent players. Chapter 1831, or Empire's Number 1 Swordsman or Empire, Silverwing Town. After Shifeng shook off the dark players' pursuit, he immediately returned to Zero Wing's residence in Silverwing Town to make arrangements for the transport and purchase of products from NPC merchants. Although he had already set up the trade route, the collection of usage fees from the NPCs who used the trade route would have to be carried out by both players and NPC soldiers. In addition, players would need to be present in person to purchase the goods that were meant to be sold to NPCs. Hence, he would need to assign considerable manpower to handle these tasks. Moreover, in order to make sure the items purchased were useful, he would have to send knowledgeable personnel to deal with the NPC merchants. However, as soon as Shifeng returned to the guild residence, he was greeted by a boisterous scene. Currently, guild members were chatting happily and excitedly with each other inside the guild hall. "Guild leader, you're back. Everyone is talking about you right now," Aqua Rose said, excitement sprouting in her heart when she saw Shifeng. "Because of your performance over at the Secret Stone Fortress, many people have already started titling you as the Empire's number 1 swordsman. Of course, there are some who object to this. They feel that you are unworthy of this title and will accept it only when they have actually fought you. Even so, due to this situation, many more players from the neighboring kingdoms are trying to join Zero Wing now. In addition, several well-known experts from the neighboring kingdoms want to challenge you. However, Fire Dance has accepted these challenges in your place and is currently fighting these experts in the battle arena right now." "Well-known experts from other kingdoms are challenging me?" Shifeng could not help but smile upon hearing this. This is a good opportunity. He had never thought that his battle over at the Secret Stone Fortress would spark such a development. Before today he had received many challenges from experts before. However, back then these had been limited to the experts of Starmoon Kingdom. Now, however, even the experts of other kingdoms were challenging him. This proved that his fame had already reached a considerable degree in those kingdoms. Otherwise, the well-known experts of those kingdoms wouldn't have come to challenge him. Meanwhile, the fact that these experts had come to challenge him was a good thing for Silverwing Town. Aqua, from today onwards, set up a challenge arena in the battle arena specifically for people wishing to challenge me. However, they cannot just issue a challenge without restrictions. Before I accept their challenge, they'll have to win 10 consecutive matches against people of our choosing. For now, select our fighters from our main force members. The challengers have to pay 5 gold for each match. If the challengers win, they'll get 20 gold in return, Shifeng said. "I understand," Aqua Rose replied, her eyes glowing. With Shifeng's plan, they could not only increase the popularity of Silverwing Town's battle arena but also earn a lot of money and train the main force members, killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Following which, Shifeng turned to Melancholic Smile, who stood beside Aqua Rose, and asked, "Melancholic, how is the production of the all-round devices in Elven Silver coming along?" Before he embarked on his quest to set up a trade route, he had left matters regarding the all-round devices and Elven Silver to Melancholic Smile to handle. The all-round device was an item he personally created. Hence, he could make as many copies of its design as he wanted. The only reason he had not bothered trying to mass-produce the all-round device until now was the much lower success rate other people would have when producing the all-round device compared to him, the creator. In addition, the production cost for the all-round device were also extremely high. However, now that everyone's forging techniques had improved, it wasn't entirely impossible to mass-produce the all-rounded device. Currently, only I have a feasible success rate when producing the all-round device. Hence, I am the only one producing it right now. I have already made 53 all-round devices. I am still far from fulfilling the 200 pieces you requested. However, Coco has become a master forger in Titan City. If we include her help, I believe it'll take only 1 more day for us to get the required 200 pieces. As for the elven silver, we already have over 200 bottles produced. We can deliver them to you at any time, Melancholic Smile reported joyfully. Coco has already been promoted into a master forger? Sherfone was overjoyed at this piece of news. A master lifestyle player would be welcomed by any major power, not to mention a master of the forger subclass, which was one of the 3 most popular subclasses. Now that Cream Coco had already become a master forger, the Candlelight trading firm's forging standards would also improve. Although Candlelight had 2 master forgers as he was a guild leader, he was always busy with one thing or another. He simply could not afford to stay cooped up producing items. Likewise, Melancholic Smile had to manage the Candlelight trading firm. The time she could spend producing items was also very limited. However, Cream Coco was different. She did not have to manage any personnel or deal with guild affairs. She could focus fully on forging. Guild leader, this isn't everything. While you were away doing your quest, the people from the Ice Crystal world sent over another large batch of materials. Save for some of the specialty materials, I split the other materials into batches and had them brought to other kingdoms and empires to be sold. I also reserved a portion for our own use. After deducting our purchasing costs and the cost of the products brought over to the Ice Crystal world, we netted over 53,000 gold from this batch of materials, Melancholic Smile said. That much. Sherfone was a little surprised when he heard Melancholic Smile's report. While it had been several days since he returned from the Ice Crystal world, he had emptied the market of all the rare materials he could find in the 2 NPC cities before leaving. He had never imagined that the players there would refill the market with materials so quickly. He had to admit that the wealth earned by selling the rare materials obtained from other worlds was truly amazing. Of course, a large part of the success this time was due to the Azura Adventurer Team and Adventurer Alliance. Without these 2 organizations, collecting so many rare materials from the Ice Crystal world wouldn't have been possible. Meanwhile, they had already generated such massive wealth despite occupying only 2 NPC cities. If they could occupy the entire Ice Crystal world, the wealth they could generate would be many times more than even what the secret pavilion's magic crystal vein could provide. It was no wonder the various superpowers fought heavily over other worlds during his previous life. Back then, the intense competition for other worlds didn't allow second- and third-rate guilds to poke a hand into the competition. Even first-rate guilds could only fight for the scraps left behind by the various superpowers. Alright, I got it. After pondering for some time, Sherfone turned to Aqua Rose and said, Aqua, contact Phoenix Rain and Unyielding Heart and tell them that we'll have their items ready by tomorrow. If they are lacking in magic crystals, they can pay a portion of the bill using coins. I'll notify them right away. Aqua Rose nodded. After Sherfone was done dealing with these matters, he promptly headed to Silverwing Town's advanced smithy. Currently, the advanced smithy was overcrowded with players. The majority of these players were here to disassemble their obsolete weapons and equipment, after which they would use the materials they obtained to order custom-made weapons and equipment. Whenever these players used the services offered by the advanced smithy, 10% of the total bill would go into Zero Wing's coffers. For the item breakdown service, Zero Wing would receive around 10 to 15 copper for bronze equipment, 20 to 30 copper for mysterious iron equipment, 40 to 50 copper for secret silver equipment, 70 to 80 copper for fine gold equipment, and 1 silver to 1 silver, 50 copper for dark gold equipment. While this might not seem like much, there were tons of people coming to get their old equipment disassembled. Including the money received from repairs and custom orders, Zero Wing earned over 400 gold from the advanced smithy every day. However, this was only the beginning. As players reached higher levels and the fame of the advanced smithy spread, more and more players would come to order custom-made equipment. At that time, the advanced smithy could earn 1,000 to 2,000 gold per day. After Sherfone took a look at the advanced smithy situation and had his weapons and equipment repaired, he used a return scroll and teleported back to White River City. He then made his way to Starmoon City's Adventurers Association. Starmoon Kingdom, Starmoon City. Inside one of the Adventurers Association's VIP rooms. Lord Protector, how may I be of service to you today? The NPC Senior Administrator asked as he looked at Sherfone. I wish to construct a transportation firm in Silverwing Town. Here is the design for it. I hope that you can start construction as soon as possible, Sherfone replied before placing the transportation firm design on the table before him. Previously, as his funds had been insufficient, he had planned on setting the transportation firm aside for the moment. However, now that he was rich again, he naturally had to get it constructed as soon as possible. That won't be a problem. The construction fee will be 20,000 gold, the senior administrator said, nodding after confirming that there was nothing wrong with the design Feng presented. Feng then took out 20,000 gold and handed the sum over to the senior administrator. After Feng completed the transaction, a system notification suddenly entered his ears. Chapter 1832, 3 Great Trading Firms. System, congratulations. You are the first player to have constructed a transportation firm. Rewarding 1 silver Twin Lions trading firm token. The system announcement repeated 3 times, the system's emotionless voice echoing in Feng's ears. Upon hearing these words, Feng fell into a daze that lasted for a long time. A silver Twin Lions token? Feng stared in shock at the silver token in his hand. Carved on this circular silver token was the image of 2 lions. There were also golden divine runes etched along its rim. It radiated an extremely ancient aura, obviously having existed for a very long time. Lord Protector, congratulations on obtaining this Twin Lions trading firm token. You are now a silver VIP of the Twin Lions trading firm, one of God's domain's 3 most ancient trading firms. It is very difficult to become one of the trading firm's VIPs. This token will be of great help to you when you are doing business or transporting goods. Lord Protector, please make sure to keep the token secure. You will not be given a new one if you lose it, the NPC senior administrator explained. However, at this point, Feng wasn't even listening to the NPC's explanation anymore. After all, he had a clearer understanding of the value of the Twin Lions trading firm's token than even the NPC administrator, having long familiarity with the ability and influence of the trading firm. The Twin Lions trading firm was one of the oldest trading firms extant in God's domain. Its origins were unknown. However, rumor had it that the Twin Lions trading firm had a hand in the establishment of the famous War God's Temple. Although the Twin Lions trading firm currently did not possess as extensive an influence as the War God's Temple, whose influence spanned the entire continent of God's domain, it was still more influential than an ordinary empire. Only the 4 great empires of God's domain could possibly rival the trading firm in influence. Meanwhile, to guilds, the Twin Lions trading firm was much more important than even the 4 great empires. In fact, the trading firm's importance to guilds surpassed the War God's temples. This distinction was because the Twin Lions trading firm's trade routes covered over half of the entire continent. Anyone ferrying non-bag space items would prefer to use the trade routes of the trading firm, as these were much safer than the trade routes operated by players. Aside from the greater danger, player-operated trade routes were far less efficient. By using the Twin Lions trading firm's trade routes, one could save more than half the travel time they would normally need when using a player-operated trade route. However, getting to utilize the Twin Lions trading firm's trade routes was not an easy task. One had to be a member of the Twin Lions trading firm. In other words, they needed to obtain one of the trading firm's tokens. Only then could they transport goods through the trading firm's trade routes. Hence, the various large guilds and merchant players in the past all sought to join the Twin Lions trading firm. Of course, the benefits and treatment one received depended on one's status in the Twin Lions trading firm. VIPs not only got more discounts but also had access to trade routes that were normally not open to lower-ranking members. This was especially true for trade routes in neutral maps. In addition, higher-ranking members also had the privilege of hiring NPC escorts from the Twin Lions trading firm. For example, in the past, due to Shadow's low ranking in the Twin Lions trading firm, Feng had no choice but to lead the guild's delivery runs himself. As a result, they frequently came under attack from NPC bandits. Had Shadow's ranking been enough in the Twin Lions trading firm to hire NPC escorts to serve as a deterrence, the guild's caravans wouldn't have come under attack so frequently. In the Twin Lions trading firm, the token one held represented their rank in the trading firm. From lowest to highest, the ranks were common, bronze, silver, gold, and elder. Although there were only 5 ranks, even the lowest common token was extremely difficult to obtain. On the market, a common Twin Lions token had been worth around 10,000 gold. Even so, nobody who had a token would be willing to sell it. One could easily imagine the difficulty of acquiring a common token. In addition, the Twin Lions trading firm acknowledged only the token and not its owner. There was no way to upgrade a token's rank. The number of tokens distributed also had a limit, and the tokens would all drop upon death. Hence, many players and powers had sought to steal the tokens in the past. From what Feng knew, There were only 99 common tokens, 49 bronze tokens, 24 silver tokens and 12 golden tokens in the game at any time. As for the Elder token, he had never heard any information about it. However, he expected it to be limited to 10. With the billions of players in God's domain, this small number of tokens simply wasn't enough to satisfy the demand. Hence, every token was extremely valuable regardless of its rank. In the past, Shifeng had managed to get his hands on a common token only by a stroke of good luck. He had never dreamed of obtaining a silver token in this life. With this, transporting important items across neutral maps will no longer be a problem. Looking at the Twin Lions token, Shifeng cooked up many new plans. Non-bag space items were always worth a fortune. This was especially true for specialty products that were unique to a certain area. The main reason for their high value was the high cost of transporting them. However, many items important to players generally required the use of these materials. Moreover, as players reached higher levels, the development of guild towns and cities would also start to require more and more non-bag space items. In addition, some special weapons and tools would necessitate the use of non-bag space items. Hence, the Twin Lions trading firm had been extremely popular among the various large guilds and merchant players. Now that Shifeng had a silver token, he would have no problem traveling across many neutral maps. He could also use these specialty non-bag space items to make a fortune. In addition, the Twin Lions trading firm would hold an auction once a month. The standard of this auction far surpassed any auction hosted by players and empires. One could say that the Twin Lions trading firm's auction was the highest standard auction in the entire God's domain. In the past, even legendary items had appeared in the auction, as well as fragmented legendary items in significant quantities. As for epic items, they were no different from commonplace items in the auction. In the past, every Twin Lions trading firm auction was a time for the various large guilds to increase their combat power. However, participating in the auction was not easy. At the very minimum, one needed to possess a common token. Depending on the rank of one's token, the number of people one could bring into the auction would differ. The common token allowed only one person entry into the auction venue, whereas the bronze token allowed 2 people, the silver token allowed 3, and the gold token allowed 5. As for the Elder token, as nobody had ever obtained one even after 10 years had passed in God's domain, nobody knew how many people the token allowed entry to. It seems I can have Aqua start tasking some people with transporting the diamond would we have stockpiled to the Apocalypse Empire's shipyard. Shifeng smiled as he looked at the silver token. Previously, as he had been worried about having insufficient strength to protect the shipment, he had not bothered transporting the diamond wood they collected. Now that he had a silver token, he could borrow the Twin Lions trading firm's power. By spending a little money, he could easily send the stockpile of diamond wood over to the Apocalypse Empire. Although he didn't have a bronze speedboat design right now, using diamond wood to construct advanced speedboats would still increase the attributes of the speedboat somewhat. Afterward, Shifeng contacted Aqua Rose and had her dispatch some guild experts to make the necessary preparations. As for himself, he returned to the Candlelight trading firm and started producing all-round devices. Although Cream Cocoa and Melancholic Smile could indeed produce enough all-round devices for the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion and Unyielding Soul, he was also in dire need of the all-round devices himself as he planned to head to the Flame Demon's Valley and activate the World Gate as soon as possible. Only with the help of the Philosopher's Hand could he increase the development speed of Candlelight's lifestyle players. The production of ships required a large number of master engineers, not to mention the production of the Hell Chariots and Guardian Puppets. Having just 2 or 3 master engineers simply wasn't enough. Meanwhile, over at Silverwing Town, the transportation firm's construction was just completed. The sudden appearance of the 3-story stadium-sized building immediately caused a commotion among the players in the town. Chapter 1833, Gathering at Silverwing Town. The 3-story tall transportation firm was located close to Silverwing Town's main entrance. Meanwhile, 10 level 100 NPC guards stood before the entrance, one of which was a Tier 3 guard captain. The guard captain carried a great sword on his back and wore silver armor. Due to the strict atmosphere around him, players kept a wary distance from the transportation firm, only daring to glance at the building from far away. However, although players did not dare approach the building, one NPC merchant after another nonchalantly entered the firm. Large caravans also moved their goods into the building on a regular basis. After several minutes, the stadium-sized building was crowded with carriages and NPCs. Many players mustered their courage and entered the building after such a lively scene. Amazing. There are so many NPC merchants here. Upon entering the transportation firm's first-floor hall, the curious players immediately spotted many NPC merchants lined up at the front counter, handling some formalities. There were easily over 1,000 NPC merchants in the building, some of which had set up stalls in front of their parked carriages, selling a variety of precious items. The scene was simply dazzling. Meanwhile, the most eye-catching thing in the transportation firm had to be the gigantic crystal hovering in the center of the hall. The crystal displayed the transportation quests available today and their corresponding rewards. The quest difficulty and requirements were also listed. Players' jaws dropped after they inspected the colossal, translucent crystal in the hall. Delivery to Bronze Teeth Town, difficulty 2-star. Requirement, Tier 2, must have completed 5 1-star quests. Remuneration, 3 gold, 300 contribution points and 1 void magic gold. Recruiting 6 people. Delivery to Bronze Teeth Town, difficulty 1-star. Requirement, level 50 or above. Remuneration, 80 silver, 50 contribution points, and 1 smart armor kit. Recruiting 10 people. Every quest offered tempting rewards. Many expert players drooled over the 2-star quests in particular. At this stage of the game, many expert players wouldn't earn 3 gold even after a full day of grinding. Although the reward items might not be as valuable as the gold, they were also highly sought after. For example, void magic gold could be used to increase a weapon's sharpness and lower its durability consumption. However, void magic gold wasn't normally sold on the market. To the expert players present, the void magic gold was far more valuable than 3 gold coins. Naturally, the 3-star quest rewards even tempted players from the various major powers. 3-star quests actually awarded rare Tier 2 skill books upon completion. Even the various major powers experts lacked Tier 2 skills. Aside from purchasing such skills with legacy points, players could only obtain them by farming monsters for skill books. However, even the drop rate for Tier 1 skill books was extremely low, not to mention Tier 2 skill books. After everyone finished gawking at the quests on the giant crystal, they noticed an exchange counter. This exchange counter allowed players to spend the contribution points and coins they earned to purchase rare items the NPC merchants sold. The available rare items were impossible to purchase elsewhere. In fact, the NPC merchants even had epic items for sale. Upon seeing these items, the players in the hall immediately went into an uproar. Quick! Notify the guild leader. We must get those epic items before the other guilds. The members of the various major powers immediately contacted their respective guilds' upper echelons and notified them about the transportation firm. As for the independent players present inside the transportation firm, their eyes glowed with excitement upon seeing the item list. Epic items. Independent players only dreamed of obtaining such items, yet as long as they earned enough coins and contribution points, they could purchase these items. In other words, they now had the possibility of acquiring an epic item. For a time, news of the transportation firm spread like a plague throughout the Ur Empire and the neighboring countries. We can purchase epic items just by collecting enough contribution points from quests? There's no status restriction. In that case, our adventurer team can contend with the various large guilds for these epic items. The rewards for Silverwing Town's transportation quests are actually so bountiful? That's at least triple the amount we get from the usual transportation quests. We need to head to Silverwing Town to develop right this instant. Many adventurer teams and independent players decided to shift their base of operations to Silverwing Town. Setting aside the fact that they could earn more money by developing there, the fact that they could purchase top-tier weapons and equipment was the final push. For a time, players swarmed toward Silverwing Town. Vice Guild Leader, what should we do? The number of players trying to enter the town has suddenly increased by more than 200,000. By the looks of it, even more people will show up later. However, we've already reached the town's entry limit of 1,500,000 players, and the players waiting outside are making a huge fuss, Yaya, Aqua Rose's assistant, said as she ran up to Aqua Rose, who was currently swamped with work. I understand. Temporarily increase the town's entry limit to 1,800,000, Aqua Rose said, nodding as she pinched the bridge of her nose. Due to the transportation firm's appearance, many merchant players had contacted her, expressing their interest in renting a shop in Silverwing Town long-term. Some top adventurer teams had even asked to garrison in Silverwing Town. These top adventurer teams had declared their willingness to purchase private houses at a high price and sign a garrison agreement with Zero Wing. She never thought that Silverwing Town would become the focal point of the Or Empire and its several neighboring countries. This had all happened so suddenly and she hadn't been prepared. Meanwhile, Shi Feng, who currently forged all-round devices in the Candlelight trading firm, remained ignorant of the situation. He simply focused on forging and increased the pile of all-round devices on his table. After working for more than half a day, Shi Feng received joyous news. Liang Jing, his temporary assistant, had finally come to a compromise with Xiao Yu and would officially join God's domain today. Moreover, she had already joined Zero Wing and used a guild transfer scroll to teleport to White River City's guild residence. To help her acclimate to God's domain, Shi Feng decided to have her assist Melancholic Smile in managing White River City's Candlelight trading firm for the moment. This way Melancholic Smile could somewhat relax. So, this is the Candlelight trading firm? Liang Jing, who wore a set of long white robes and held a wooden staff, couldn't help but gape at the towering building before her. In her opinion, a virtual reality game was only a form of entertainment. However, after logging into God's domain, she discovered that this game was no different than reality. In fact, she felt that her senses in the game were much sharper than her senses in the real world. If not for the diamond markers and HP bars hovering above the players around her, she'd even have suspected that she had been transported into another world. Aside from God's domain's realism, the number of players she saw in the city also shocked her. She had never thought that White River City would have so many players. The city's commercial district where she currently stood was even livelier than Jianghu City's commercial district. Meanwhile, the most eye-catching building in the district actually belonged to Zero Wing. This was simply inconceivable. "Are you Liang Jing, the person the guild leader mentioned?" While Liang Jing tried to process the new information and environment, she noticed a mellow voice. Turning towards its origin, Liang Jing discovered a beautiful young woman in a luxurious dress. Upon hearing this woman greet Liang Jing, nearby players shot the new woman envious glances. What's going on? Liang Jing was even more confused upon noticing players' reactions. Chapter 1834, Frightening Zero Wing. Looking at the woman approaching her, Liang Jing could feel the weight of the surrounding players' gazes. The long line of players waiting to enter the Candlelight trading firm turned to look at her, as well. If these people were focused on the woman approaching her, she could, more or less, understand their reactions. After all, the woman before her was tall and elegant, with a face and temperament to match. It was only natural that such a graceful woman would attract attention. But these players were focused on her, not this woman. A moment ago, these people had ignored her, yet she had instantly become a sensation the moment this beautiful young woman had called out to her. The beauty greeting Liang Jing was none other than Melancholic Smile. According to Shi Feng, he had found her a capable assistant, although her guild leader had asked that she show Liang Jing the ropes first. "Hello, I am Melancholic Smile. I will be helping you learn about the Candlelight trading firm and all there is to know about our business. If there is anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me," Melancholic Smile introduced herself. After Melancholic Smile's introduction, the nearby players went into an uproar. Crap. Who is that woman? Melancholic Smile actually came out to greet her? Could she be some sort of master lifestyle player? That can't be it. She's only level 10 and she isn't wearing a lifestyle insignia. She's definitely a newbie, but she must be someone important if Melancholic came to welcome her personally. Maybe she is the heiress of some major corporation, here to visit the Candlelight trading firm? For a time, the lifestyle players seeking to join the Candlelight trading firm quietly discussed Liang Jing's identity, glancing at the woman with envy and admiration. Not only was Melancholic Smile the Candlelight trading firm's manager, but she was also a master forger. She was one of Zero Wing's core upper echelons. Rumors had it that many superpowers and major corporations had even offered astronomical prices to hire her, but she had rejected them all. Melancholic Smile was an idol to lifestyle players like them. Not only was she very beautiful, but her forging standards also ranked at the apex of God's domain. They all dreamed of a life like the one Melancholic Smile enjoyed. That was also the reason that so many lifestyle players had come from neighboring kingdoms to join Candlelight. Meanwhile, overhearing the nearby lifestyle players' discussions, Liang Jing was inwardly shocked as she examined the player before her. She never thought that this woman held such a high position. She also blushed with embarrassment as she heard the players guess her identity. The heiress of a major corporation? She was only the assistant of the Big Dipper Group's chairman. She was insignificant compared to an heiress. After Melancholic Smile and Liang Jing introduced themselves, they entered the Candlelight trading firm. White River City's Candlelight trading firm was the sole 3-star shop in Star Moon Kingdom. When Liang Jing entered the building, she felt as if she had stepped into a modern shopping mall. Only the shop had magical elements, unlike a mall in the real world. Customers crowded the first-floor hall, stupefying Liang Jing. She hadn't imagined that a shop in God's domain could be so lively. Melancholic Smile simply smiled at Liang Jing's reaction before leading the new recruit to the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor and up were not open to the public, only Candlelight's members had access. Currently, the Candlelight trading firm has over 20,000 lifestyle players. They're split across multiple branches. Among them, over 4,000 have officially signed a contract to become internal members. You could say that Candlelight is the bona fide #1 trading firm throughout Star Moon Kingdom. This shop alone houses a little over 2,000 lifestyle players. In the future you will manage this shop and its employees, Melancholic Smile explained as she gestured to the various workshops, which contained Candlelight's lifestyle players hard at work. Although you won't have to manage a lot of people at first, once you get used to the job and perform well, I'll have you take over managing Silverwing Town. Things are getting hectic in Silverwing right now. We just increased the entry limit to 1,800,000 people. We'll have to increase this number slowly in the future, so we have a lot to do. As Liang Jing listened to Melancholic Smile's explanation, she wondered if she had heard wrong. Candlelight had over 20,000 employees. Moreover, over 4,000 were officially contracted to the trading firm. In other words, there were over 4,000 players working as full-time employees for Candlelight. This was several times more than the Big Dipper Group's employees. Later, she'd even have to manage a town with 1,800,000 players. This was simply madness. If the situation was as Melancholic Smile had described, as the assistant of the Big Dipper Group's chairman, she was certain that Zero Wing was far wealthier than the Big Dipper Group. There was simply no comparing the two. She had always wondered why Shifeng acted so nonchalantly towards the Big Dipper Dojo's offers. It had offered a salary and benefits that countless people dreamed of, yet Shifeng had settled for a temporary position, focusing his efforts on God's domain. Now she finally understood. It turned out that the Big Dipper Group's offers, which it had deemed quite generous, were little more than a farce to Shifeng. He had only been working for the Big Dipper as a pastime. Meanwhile, Shifeng had offered her a position with Zero Wing in God's domain because he had appreciated her management skills, and Xiaoyu wanted to use the opportunity to learn more about Shifeng's affairs. Whether she chose to work for the Big Dipper Group or Zero Wing Workshop in the future would be up to her. However, right now, she had no idea how she was supposed to report her discoveries to Chairman Xiao. What Liang Jing did not know was that Silverwing Town wasn't Zero Wing's most populated territory. Rather, Star Moon Kingdom's Zero Wing City saw far more traffic with a player population several times higher than Silverwing Town. Elsewhere, Shifeng, ignorant of Liang Jing's thoughts, still focused on forging all-round devices. Finally, after a full day of work, he had crafted over 100 all-round devices. He had also made quite a few standard level 50 fine gold and dark gold weapons. Thanks to all the EXP from forging, he had finally reached level 68. Although he had killed plenty of monsters when setting up the trade route, due to the NPC's participation, the EXP reward had been significantly reduced. He had only received a lot of EXP after he completed the quest. Even so, it hadn't been enough to push him to level 68. However, compared to his recent level up, the Philosopher's Hand's ability truly surprised Shifeng. When he used the Philosopher's Soul to help guide him in forging level 50 fine gold and dark gold weapons, the designs he had obtained from Titan City, the finished products had ranged between level 50 and 55. It was a massive improvement. Although a standardized level 55 fine gold weapon was slightly weaker than level 55 fine gold equipment acquired from monsters, it was still considerably stronger than a level 50 fine gold weapon. This was also the case for standardized level 55 dark gold weapons. The highest leveled players in the various large guilds were currently level 55. Hence, trying to acquire level 55 weapons was extremely difficult. Currently, most of these level 55 experts still used level 50 fine gold weapons. If given the choice, these experts would definitely wield a standardized level 55 dark gold weapon. If he sold these standardized dark gold weapons in bulk, he could fetch a higher price than normal. Suddenly, Melancholic Smile contacted Feng and reported, "Guild leader, the representatives from the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion and Unyielding Soul have arrived. They're waiting in the second-floor VIP reception room." "Alright, I'll head over now." Nodding, Feng collected his forged items and headed to the reception room. Chapter 1835, Massive Profits. Candlelight Trading Firm's VIP reception room. Currently, Phoenix Rain, Blue Phoenix, Unyielding Heart, and Mu Lingsha waited in the reception room. "Uncle Heart, are the items you mentioned really that effective?" Mu Lingsha asked worriedly. "The guild has employed various methods, but we still haven't made it into the Dark Battleground's inner region. Moreover, the Silent Water's corrosion is extremely powerful. Even the rare Advanced Toughness potion only extends our survival rate a little. We've shed all pretenses with the Starline Corporation already and are engaged in an all-out war with them. We can only spare a very limited amount of resources. If we spend so many magic crystals and these items end up being useless, it'll be disastrous." When she had asked Unyielding Heart to lead a team in assisting Zero Wing, she had assumed that the guild only needed some help with a slightly difficult quest. Yet when Unyielding Heart had returned, he had told her that Zero Wing had secured the Hell Mode Eclipse Throne's first clear. The report had left her flabbergasted. She had never realized that Zero Wing's main force was so powerful. Moreover, Unyielding Heart had praised Zero Wing's black flame. His praise was rare, even in Unyielding Soul. Unyielding Heart had gone on to mention that Zero Wing possessed some special tools that could help them deal with the Dark Battleground's severe environment. This revelation had further increased her shock. Truthfully, she wanted to believe Unyielding Heart's claim, but she couldn't bring herself to do so. Their guild had expended a lot of effort to reach the Dark Battleground's inner region, but every method they tried had been a failure. She had even worked herself to the bone to find a solution to this problem. Yet, Unyielding Heart had told her that Zero Wing had 2 items that could help their survival in the map. Moreover, Zero Wing could produce enough of these items for a 100-man team. "Miss Mu, you can rest assured," Unyielding Heart said with a bitter smile. Over the past few days, Mu Lingsha had repeatedly asked him the same question, yet no matter how many times he explained the situation, the young lady refused to believe him. However, it wasn't as if he couldn't understand her feelings. At this point, Unyielding Soul and Starlink, the Starline Corporation's guild, were engaged in a bitter war. As a result, Unyielding Soul spent a frightening amount of resources each day. Meanwhile, purchasing 100 all-round devices and 100 bottles of elven silver would cost them 40,000 magic crystals. And since Zero Wing had produced the items within 3 days as per their agreement, Unyielding Soul had to pay an additional 5,000 magic crystals. For the guild, 45,000 magic crystals were by no means a small amount. If after paying so many magic crystals the items were useless, they'd cry with regret. Mu Lingsha found it difficult to respond to Unyielding Heart's comment. She could only hope these items would be as helpful as he claimed. Big Sis Rain, Unyielding Soul's representative, seemed worried about something. "Do you think they plan on backing out of the purchase?" Blue Phoenix asked as she eyed Mu Lingsha's worried expression. Giggling, she continued, "If they do, we'll get to purchase their share as well. Then we'll have a much easier time exploring the Sea of Death's inner islands." "Why would they possibly back out?" Phoenix Rain asked, chuckling. "Unyielding Soul has fought several large-scale battles against Starlink in the Dark Knight Empire and desperately needs weapons, equipment and war weapons. Both guilds are furiously fighting for the high-resource maps that yield weapons and equipment. If Unyielding Soul wishes to obtain these items, it'll have to farm high-resource maps with hostile environments. The guild will have a higher chance of securing the items in those maps. Unyielding Soul needs all-rounded devices and elven silver more than anything right now. It can't afford to back out this deal." Blue Phoenix saw the reasoning in her pavilion master's words. The more hostile a map's environment was, the more treasures it would have to offer. Take the Sea of Death for example. After exploring the sea zone's dangerous islands, the various superpowers had acquired a significant harvest now. All of the various superpowers were organizing large, powerful teams to explore the Sea of Death. However, to explore the map's islands effectively, the superpowers would need items that could reduce the hostile environment's impact on their players. While acquiring a small number of such items was not a problem, acquiring them in bulk was almost impossible. If they could get their hands on the all-round devices and elven silver, Even if they didn't use the items for themselves, they could earn impressive profits by reselling them. While both guilds' representatives quietly talked among themselves, the reception room's door swung open. Following which, a cloaked, middle-aged man entered the room, and the occupants fell silent when they saw him. He is Black Flame. Mu Lingsha was shocked when she looked at the new arrival. What a powerful aura. Shi Feng radiated an extremely strong, violent aura. In Mu Lingsha's eyes, Shi Feng felt like a primordial beast, rather than a player. What Mu Lingsha did not know was that the aura didn't belong to Shi Feng. Instead, it radiated from the abyssal blade at his waist. The abyssal blade's aura could no longer be contained after Shi Feng had upgraded it to level 50. Because of this, Shi Feng had chosen to appear as Black Flame for this meeting. Sorry for the long wait, I had some business to deal with, Shi Feng apologized. It's fine. We just arrived as well, Unyielding Heart said, chuckling. Moreover, if it means we can obtain the all-round devices and elven silver, even a several-hour wait would be worth it. Phoenix Rain, who sat close to Unyielding Heart, could not help but smile when she heard the man's words. She hadn't expected Unyielding Heart to be so direct about his desire for the items. Alright, since everyone is here for these two, let's get straight to business, Shi Feng said. He then took out the all-round devices and elven silver he had prepared and placed them on the table before him. After working around the clock with my people, we forged a total of 400 all-round devices and 450 bottles of elven silver. According to our previous agreement, 200 of each item will go to the Phoenix Pavilion Master, while 100 of each item are reserved for Brother Heart. As for the 5,000 magic crystals we agreed on before, we'll just forget about that. I'd like to sell the remaining 100 all-round devices and 150 bottles of elven silver via a private auction. You may bid for these extras with coins. May I know your opinions about this arrangement? Alright. I have no problems with that. Upon hearing that Shi Feng had so many extra items, Phoenix Rain could not help but inwardly celebrate. I don't have any arguments either. Unyielding Heart nodded in agreement. Only he slightly regretted his previous decision. Had he known Zero Wing was capable of producing so many all-round devices and elven silver, he would have ordered more. However, when he considered his uncertainty about how useful the elven silver would be against the Silent Water, he dismissed his regret. Hearing the two players' agreement, Shi Feng proceeded with fulfilling their previous arrangements. In the end, Shi Feng received 80,000 magic crystals from Phoenix Rain and 40,000 magic crystals from Unyielding Heart. He then allowed both to bid for the additional all-round devices and elven silver, auctioning the items off in batches of 10. As the transaction could be completed using coins, both guilds bid on the items without issues. In the end, Phoenix Rain had purchased 80 all-round devices and 120 bottles of elven silver, while Unyielding Heart bought the rest. When comparing foundations, Unyielding Soul was definitely superior to the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. However, Unyielding Soul didn't have as much financial freedom due to its war with Starlink. Meanwhile, Phoenix Rain had earned quite a bit from the authority she wielded on Thunder Island and the harvest from the Sea of Death. Hence, in terms of financial strength, the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion was currently stronger than Unyielding Soul. After selling the extra items, Shi Feng had made over 20,000 gold. Both super first-rate guilds were also quite satisfied with the outcome. As the representatives of both guilds were about to leave. Since we've sold the all-round devices and elven silver, let us start the auction for today's main course, Shi Feng said, intentionally dragging out his statement. Main course. You have something even better than the all-round devices and elven silver? Phoenix Rain and Unyielding Heart gave Shi Feng confused looks. How could he possibly have something more valuable than the two items? Correct. Shi Feng then began to pull the standardized level 55 dark gold weapons from his bag, putting them on display before his guests. Chapter 1836, Arming Teams. The one-handed saber Shi Feng placed on the table looked quite modest, like a very ordinary weapon, yet it radiated the glow unique to dark gold weapons. A dark gold weapon that can be used up to level 55. When Phoenix Rain and Unyielding Heart looked at the dark gold weapon, they could not help their confusion. In terms of attributes, it was only slightly better than a level 50 dark gold weapon. While it might be very tempting to ordinary expert players, to guild upper echelon like themselves, it was nothing special. Although a level 55 dark gold weapon was indeed very valuable in terms of usefulness, there was simply no comparison between it and the all-round device or elven silver. Not to mention the level 55 dark gold weapon Shifeng just took out did not possess any special traits. It neither added any resistances nor granted extraordinarily high attributes. Hence, they found it truly confusing that Shifeng was treating this weapon as the finale item. Just as Phoenix Rain and Unyielding Heart were wondering what Shifeng's intention was by taking out such a plain dark gold weapon, Shifeng took out another weapon from his bag and placed it on the table. This time it wasn't a saber but a greatsword instead. He's selling 2 items? Blue Phoenix, who was watching from the side, was also baffled by this situation. Let alone 2 level 55 dark gold weapons, even 2 epic weapons wouldn't be enough to tempt representatives of super first-rate guilds like Phoenix Rain and Unyielding Heart. However, just as Blue Phoenix was having such thoughts, Shifeng proceeded to take out another weapon from his bag. Moreover, he showed no signs of stopping even after revealing the third weapon. 3, 4, 8. By the time 10 level 55 dark gold weapons were laid out on the table, Phoenix Rain's and Unyielding Heart's expressions had changed. While level 55 dark gold weapons were not that easy to obtain, with the current strength Zero Wing's main force possessed, they understood that Zero Wing definitely could acquire some. If it were only 2 or 3 dark gold weapons, they wouldn't have felt particularly surprised by the situation. However, having 10 level 55 dark gold weapons was an entirely different story. As you can imagine, I am able to obtain quite a number of these level 55 dark gold weapons. These 10 articles are merely samples for you to see. What do you think of these weapons? Shifeng asked, smiling as he looked at the 2 people wearing serious expressions before him. Currently he had produced only 10 level 55 dark gold weapons. It wasn't that he did not wish to produce more but that he lacked the materials to do so. While the materials needed to produce these weapons were not very rare and were available in the market, they were not usually sold in large quantities. Collecting a sufficient amount would take considerable time. This was also the reason why the various large guilds that could produce dark gold weapons made only a very limited quantity. In the current God's domain, having 10 level 55 dark gold weapons was already a staggering feat. You still have more of these? Phoenix Rain asked, pleasantly surprised. May I know how many more of these weapons Brother Black Flame has? Unyielding Heart asked hurriedly. A single level 55 dark gold weapon was indeed nothing significant to them because one weapon could improve the combat power of only one player. The improvement would be minimal. However, after reaching a certain quantity, these level 55 dark gold weapons would have much more of an impact. With enough of these weapons, one could elevate the combat power of a team to a whole new level. Meanwhile, this increase in combat power would be very useful when a team was raiding field bosses. Not many, Shifeng said. Raising 3 fingers, he added, I only have enough to equip a 300-man team. May I know if the 2 of you are interested in this transaction? Guild leader Black Flame, you're not joking, right? Enough to equip a 300-man team? Doesn't that mean you have over 100 level 55 dark gold weapons? Mu Lingsha, who sat at a side, asked, her face twitching involuntarily. The weapons placed on the table were all meant for physical classes. None were for magical classes. Even so, trying to equip every physical class in a 300-man team would still require over 100 weapons. Currently, she wasn't even certain whether the various superpowers possessed level 55 dark gold weapons. At the very least, Unyielding Soul definitely did not. No matter how she looked at it, she simply could not accept that Zero Wing could actually take out over 100 of these weapons. Meanwhile, Phoenix Rain's and Unyielding Heart's lips also twitched slightly when they heard Shifeng's words. This revelation truly came as a shock to them. With so many level 55 dark gold weapons, they could construct 3 very powerful 100-man teams. So long as each team had sufficient tier 2 players, even raiding level 50 100-man team dungeons wouldn't be a problem. If they had 3 teams capable of consistently raiding level 50 100-man team dungeons, their guild's income of weapons and equipment would increase drastically. They could even acquire level 50 dungeon set equipment within 1 cooldown cycle. May I know how Brother Black Flame plans on selling these weapons? Unyielding Heart asked, a passionate flame burning in his eyes. Right, Guild Leader Black Flame, how do you plan on selling these weapons? Phoenix Rain asked in a serious tone as well. She could not help but admit that this finale item was truly a finale among finales. After all, while the all-round devices in Elven Silver only provided them with a chance of obtaining top-tier weapons and equipment, placed right before them was a guarantee of doing so. Simple. Shi Feng then took out 2 sets of documents listing some rare materials and handed these to the 2 people before him. Using the listed materials as the standard and 300 sets of them as one batch, so long as you collect one batch of materials, you may purchase 40 weapons. We'll use these 300 sets of materials as the starting bid. You can then increase the price using magic crystals or coins, with each increment being worth no less than 100 gold. After reading the list of materials Shi Feng provided, Phoenix Rain and Unyielding Heart gasped involuntarily. Although the materials listed were not particularly rare, one full set was already worth quite a lot. Yet now they needed 300 sets just to qualify to participate in the auction. Shi Feng's asking price truly wasn't low. I don't have any problems here, Phoenix Rain said, nodding. A first-rate guild would indeed face great difficulty collecting 300 sets of the listed materials. It wasn't a matter of money but of the rarity of the materials. With the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's huge sphere of influence, however, collecting 300 sets within a short period was still doable. Deal? Unyielding Heart was also determined to go through with this transaction. So long as he could obtain 40 of these level 55 dark gold weapons, he would have the confidence to lead his guild's main force to obtain the first clear of a level 50, 100-man team dungeon. Moreover, in terms of ability to collect resources, his side was much stronger than Phoenix Rain's. After all, the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion was an alliance of 2 guilds. Phoenix Rain could mobilize only half of the guild's resources at most. Since both of you are fine with this, let us start the auction now then. Upon seeing that both sides found his proposal acceptable, Shi Feng grew even more joyful. Truthfully, even he felt that the amount of materials he was asking for was a little excessive, and he expected that the 2 guilds might balk at the condition. After all, even the current Zero Wing wasn't capable of collecting 300 sets of the materials at short notice. However, when he thought about how both the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion and Unyielding Soul were super first-rate guilds, he concluded that acquiring 300 sets of the materials shouldn't be impossible for them, although it would hurt their pockets slightly. By setting such a high price in the first place, so long as he could acquire 300 sets of the materials required, given his production success rate, which was above 30%, he could instantly earn not only his cost but also quite an amount of materials to arm Zero Wing. Now, however, it would seem that he had somewhat underestimated the foundations of the 2 super first-rate guilds. After all, the 2 representatives before him didn't even frown as they agreed to his proposal. Apparently, they were more than capable of acquiring over 300 sets of the materials. Chapter 1837, Titan Guard Upgraded. As Shi Feng started the auction, Phoenix Rain and Unyielding Heart placed bids in a frenzy without any concern for each other. 2,000 gold. 3,000 gold. 5,000 gold. Whether Phoenix Rain or Unyielding Heart won the items, 40 level 55 dark gold weapons would serve a great purpose. These weapons were of the utmost importance to their respective guilds' development. Naturally, they wouldn't hold back. Rather than increasing the bid in 100 gold increments, they increased it by 1,000 gold increments. In just a few minutes, the price had reached 24,000 gold with Unyielding Heart's bid. Including the cost of the materials, the total value of his offer was far more than what these 40 dark gold weapons were worth. However, Unyielding Heart did not care. Even Mu Lingsha had hinted that Unyielding Heart had to acquire the weapons regardless of the cost. Their guild currently competed with Starlink to obtain the first clear of a level 50, 100-man team dungeon. Both guilds had already reached the final boss in their respective dungeons, and these weapons would ensure Unyielding Soul's victory. Even if they had to spend a little more coins than expected, they could easily earn back the cost. 30,000 gold. Phoenix Rain instantly raised the price by a significant margin. She had already acquired the all-round devices and elven silver, but if she had these dark gold weapons as well, capturing the Sea of Death's inner islands would become far easier. After competing for several more minutes, Phoenix Rain won the first batch of weapons for 40,000 gold and 300 sets of materials. Unyielding Heart then claimed the second batch for 43,000 gold and 300 sets of materials. Although he wanted to win the last batch as well, due to lack of funds and these weapons' ordinary nature, he didn't go all out in the bidding. As a result, Phoenix Rain won the third batch of weapons for 41,000 gold and 300 sets of materials. Super first-rate guilds really are rich. After Shi Feng signed a contract with both sides, joy filled his heart, although he didn't show it. He had to admit that becoming a master forger really was beneficial. Just by selling 3 batches of standardized dark gold weapons, he had earned 124,000 gold and 900 sets of materials. This price far exceeded his initial expectations. Now he had the money to construct the airport and repair the secret stone forest, in addition to enough materials to arm Zero Wing's members. Had he sold these weapons in single units or to small guilds, he would never have gotten such a good price. However, the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion and Unyielding Soul couldn't collect the required materials as easily as Shifeng had suspected either. This was especially true for Phoenix Rain, who would need roughly 1 day to collect all 300 sets. Unyielding Heart similarly needed a little time to collect all the materials. Shifeng could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. He could only start crafting the weapons after he obtained the materials, and if the 2 guilds paid him in one go, he wouldn't have their purchased items ready. Hence, as a compromise, Shifeng had asked both guilds pay a portion of the required materials as a down payment. Only after they brought the remaining materials and funds would he hand over the weapons. With this compromise, not only would he have materials to produce the weapons, but the 2 guilds would also have extra time to collect the remaining materials. Neither Phoenix Rain nor Unyielding Heart had any issues with this arrangement. They hadn't brought enough money for the purchases to begin with, so it was expected that Shifeng ask for a down payment. Doing so would also ensure that Zero Wing couldn't sell the 120 dark gold weapons to anyone else. Neither Phoenix Rain nor Unyielding Heart had suspected that Zero Wing had crafted these weapons. They had assumed that the guild had acquired the items from farming monsters. Since their guilds didn't have the full payments ready, a down payment was understandable. Phoenix Rain and Unyielding Heart had their subordinates deliver the agreed-upon down payment, which was 30% of the full amount. In return, both guilds would be granted a full day to collect the remaining funds and materials. When the 270 sets of materials were delivered, Shifeng recruited Melancholic Smile and Cream Cocoa to help him craft the weapons. Although standardized level 55 dark gold weapons required a lot of time to produce, with 3 master forgers working around the clock and the Philosopher's Hand's guidance, it took them no time at all to complete the 120 weapons. After less than half a day, the 3 had used all 270 sets of materials and produced 114 weapons. Including the original 10 Shifeng had made, they had a total of 124 level 55 dark gold weapons now. Once the weapons had been forged, Shifeng left the transaction's follow-up work to Melancholic Smile. He then contacted Aqua Rose and had her gather 20 main force members. He planned to head to the level 70 neutral map, Flame Demon's Valley. After his trade with the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion and Unyielding Soul, Shifeng realized that he had to prioritize unsealing the Philosopher's Hand fully. Partially unsealing the Philosopher's Hand had already been so profitable. If he could fully unseal it, he could nurture a large number of master lifestyle players. Not only would he be able to arm Silverwing Town to the teeth, but he'd also be able to fortify the Lost Town. Then he wouldn't have to worry about the Evil God's Temple, which grew stronger with each passing day in the Orc Empire. He wouldn't have to worry about Blackwater either. He could definitely afford a battle of attribution with both the Evil God's Temple and Blackwater simultaneously. After all, war was a competition of wealth and resources. Thinking up to this point, Shifeng felt even greater need to head to the Flame Demon's Valley. In less than half an hour, Aqua Rose had gathered Cola, Fire Dance, Violet Cloud, and the other core upper echelons. As the group approached the guild's meeting room, they chatted and discussed the recent challengers they had faced in Silverwing Town's battle arena. After Shifeng had set the battle arena's new rules, quite a few famous experts from the neighboring kingdoms and empires visited Silverwing Town to challenge Zero Wing's guild leader. Some experts had also visited the town purely to spar with Zero Wing's experts. The battle arena's popularity in Silverwing Town had skyrocketed, and it was now even more popular than the battle arena in Zero Wing City. Meanwhile, Cola and the others' arrival in White River City's guild hall had caused a commotion among the other guild members. Now that I'm so close to them, I can really feel how powerful our guild's main force members are. Commander Fire Dance is especially powerful. Recently, I've heard that of all the challenges she accepted, she won every single one of them. I've even heard that she defeated the 5th-ranked assassin in the Black Dragon Empire. Commander Fire Dance has a 3-digit winning streak. That's right. I've also heard that on the latest issue of the God's Domain Experts list, Commander Fire Dance ranks as the 319th expert thanks to her excellent battle records. But I still think that she hasn't revealed all of her strength yet. Her rank will definitely climb in the future. That's only natural. However, the current God's Domain ranking list has changed. Now, if you want to earn a spot on the list or improve your rank, you have to be strong enough and have a dazzling battle record. I wonder when I'll become a main force member. I really want to train directly under Commander Fire Dance. The guild holds a qualifying tournament once a month. You can participate as long as you become a core member. Right. I'll work hard to become a core member first. As the players in the guild hall talked about Fire Dance and the other main force members of the guild, a desire to join Zero Wing's main force overwhelmed them. Meanwhile, Shifeng, who had hidden his appearance under a black cloak, couldn't help but chuckle as he overheard the various conversations. He then made his way toward the guild hall's meeting room. Guild leader, are we going on a major operation this time? Kola asked eagerly after Shifeng entered the room. He had improved significantly in the battle arena lately and itched to display his new strength. Of course. However, we have to replace your equipment first, Shifeng said, nodding. Replace my equipment? Kola was confused. He currently wore the Dark Corrosion set, the best available Dark Gold set equipment in the game right now, and quite a few of his other pieces were epic rank. He didn't understand what Shifeng wanted to replace. Give me your shield first, Shifeng said. Shield? Kola revealed an excited expression as he guessed. Could it be? That's right. We didn't have enough magic crystals before, but we do now, Shifeng said, nodding. Kola eagerly handed his Titan Guard to Shifeng, anticipation filling his eyes. Although he had been saving his own magic crystals, it would take him forever to collect 100,000 on his own. Moreover, the guild always needed magic crystals, making it almost impossible for him to upgrade his shield. After Shifeng received the Titan Guard, he immediately chose to upgrade it. Chapter 1838, Fragmented Legendary Shield's Hidden Effect Inside the Resplendent Meeting Room. After Shifeng clicked to upgrade the Titan Guard, the shield began to glow with a brilliant light that forced the players in the room to close their eyes. By the time everyone reopened their eyes, they felt a horrific pressure wash over them. Instinctively, these players took up a defensive stance. What's going on? What's with this powerful aura? Could it be from that shield? This can't be possible, right? This aura is as intense as that of a mythic monster. All of these players were experts, and they had experienced countless life-or-death battles. They had long since developed senses that surpassed that of a wild beast. If they hadn't known that they were absolutely safe in this meeting room, they would have pulled out their weapons and prepared for combat. Once the intensity of the Titan Guard's aura reached its peak, it began to fade. So, this is a fragmented legendary shield? Shifeng was inwardly shocked as he felt the Titan Guard become lighter than it had been. Although the shield had never been particularly heavy, holding it still restricted his movement. Now, however, the Titan Guard was as light as a feather. It felt as if the cold, tough metallic frame were merely an illusion. The shield's hidden effect was truly frightening. It was common knowledge in God's domain that shields were so large so the MTs could effectively block a boss's attacks. In return, the shields were considerably heavy. Of course, there were lighter shields such as wooden or steel bucklers. Although a buckler was easier to use and gave MTs more freedom of movement, its flaws were apparent with a buckler's small size. Blocking attacks properly was strenuous. This was especially true during a high-speed fight. Hence, the various large guilds' MTs usually used large, heavy shields. However, now, not only did the Titan Guard possess a huge defensive area, but it was also light. It was a dream shield for any MT. Moreover, compared to the Titan Guard's hidden effect, its new attributes were truly frightening. Titan Guard, Shield, Fragmented Legendary Rank. Minimum Equipment Level, 50 Equipment Requirement. Strength 1400 Attributes adjust according to user's level. Defense plus 9450, level 50. Block rate 39%. Strength plus 245, Endurance plus 224, Agility plus 190 Defense skill plus 3 levels Reaction ability plus 2. Strength increased by 35%, Agility increased by 30%, and Endurance increased by 30%. Ignore levels plus 20. All item level requirements reduced by 5 levels. When equipped. All magic damage received reduced by 50%. Reaction speed increased by 20%. Paralysis effects reduced by 40%. Frontal damage received reduced by 30%. All resistances increased by 30%. Additional passive skill 1 dash. Guardian Shield automatically generates a layer of guardian energy, which can block an attack and absorb a portion of the attack's strength to recover user's stamina every 10 seconds. Additional passive skill 2 dash. Iron Wall reduces the impact from incoming attacks by 50%. If attacks are of a lower tier than user, reduces damage by 70%. If attacks are of the same or higher tier than user, reduces damage by 30%. Additional active skill 1 dash. Titan's Heart generates 3 layers of protective energy that absorbs damage equivalent to 10 times of wielder's maximum HP, increases physique by 30%, reaction speed by 20%, and movement speed by 20% for 45 seconds. During this period, battle recovery improved by 800%, and healing received increased by 100%. Cooldown, 5 minutes. Additional active skill 2 dash. Titan's Will becomes immune to all control effects. Reduces all damage received by 95% and weakens negative effects by 90%. Increases attack speed by 100% and movement speed by 30%. Starting movement speed set at 80% of maximum movement speed. Duration 30 seconds. Cooldown 3 minutes. Cannot stack with other defensive skills. Additional active skill 3 dash. Titan's Domain. Every non-friendly target within a 100-yard radius will increase wielder's basic attributes by 2%, reduces damage received by 1%, and heals wielder by 0.1% HP every second. Duration, 1 minute. Cooldown, 2 hours. Maximum number of targets, 100. With these attributes, an ordinary MT could immediately become a peak MT by equipping the Titan Guard. Guild Leader, how are the attributes? Kola asked excitedly. Take a look for yourself, Shifeng said, chuckling. He then passed the Titan Guard back to Kola. When Kola received the Titan Guard, he noticed the change to the shield's weight. When he saw the shield's attributes, even his breathing became harsh. Guild Leader, can we go find a mythic boss? Kola asked, staring at Shifeng with desire in his eyes. He was like a swordsman that had just acquired a treasured sword and was eager to test out his new weapon. Kola had worn the best equipment in God's domain. Even while wielding the epic rank Titan Guard, he could tank a mythic monster of the same level. Now that Titan Guard had been upgraded, he felt that he could face a mythic monster head-on. Of course, he knew that was a misconception. After all, a mythic monster was still a mythic monster. Although he couldn't face a mythic monster in a direct confrontation, he was confident of tanking a mythic monster by himself. Whether or not he could kill the monster would depend on his team's DPS. Relax. You'll have plenty of opportunities later, Shifeng assured his guildmate, smiling. Shifeng had already been roughly 50% certain that he could complete his quest in the Flame Demon's Valley, but with the fragmented legendary ranked Titan Guard, his success rate had risen to 80% at the minimum. Following which, Shifeng had everyone switch to fire resistance equipment. He also allocated several all-round devices, Elven Silver, and the master-ranked fire resistance potion, which Silent Wonder had crafted. His teammates were confused. After equipping the fire resistance equipment, they had over 100 points in fire resistance. With so much, they shouldn't have any issues raiding the current large-scale team dungeons with high-temperature environments, yet Shifeng wanted them to use master fire resistance potions as well. Just where were they going? We're heading to the Flame Demon's Valley. Before we go, I have to remind you all that once we're in the valley, you must follow me closely. You absolutely must not get lost, Shifeng said. The Flame Demon's Valley? Isn't that a level 70+ danger zone? Aqua Rose, who was relatively familiar with God's Domain's maps, asked, shocked. The other players gasped when they heard Aqua Rose's question. While they weren't familiar with the Flame Demon's Valley, they knew what a danger zone was. The Black Dragon Empire had quite a few danger zones, as did Starmoon Kingdom. However, they had never heard of a guild successfully exploring either country's level 30 to 40 danger zones. At most, some guilds had played around in these danger zones' outer regions, but they didn't dare venture to the inner areas as death was almost certain upon entry. While part of the reason was the danger zone's extraordinarily harsh environments, the map's monsters were far more dangerous and extremely powerful. Not only did the danger zone's monsters have incredibly high basic attributes, but they also displayed very high combat standards. Even the weakest monster in danger zones had combat standards at the trial tower's 3rd floor. Meanwhile, as one ventured further into the zone, they'd face even stronger monsters. Near the inner regions, one would begin to encounter monsters that could reach the trial tower's 5th floor. Just thinking about a group of several hundred of such monsters would make any expert player shudder with fear. Yet, Shifeng had so casually mentioned that they were about to head to a level 70+ danger zone. If Aqua Rose hadn't told them about the Flame Demon's Valley, they would have assumed that they were going to some ordinary map based on Shifeng's tone. Relax. I've already investigated the area. Once we enter, you just need to follow my lead. Naturally, Shifeng knew what kind of horrors to expect in the Flame Demon's Valley. Danger zones are also blessed maps. They are the best places to refine your skills. Don't you want to grow stronger? Hearing Shifeng's explanation, everyone's eyes glowed with excitement and anticipation. While they had fought in Silverwing Town's battle arena, they had realized how vast God's domain truly was. Although many of the challengers hadn't been famous, their combat standards had been extraordinary. They had only managed to defeat these experts thanks to their superior equipment. Now that they had learned of a place where they could train and improve their abilities, of course they wanted to visit it. Shifeng then led his team to Starmoon City before teleporting to the Flame Dragon Empire and again to one of its border towns. In the end, Shifeng used the 7 Luminaries Ring spatial gate to transport everyone across the remaining distance. After several hours, the team finally arrived before a valley that radiated waves of heat. Despite just standing at the valley's entrance, the area was hot enough to sting their skin. They did not even dare to imagine how high the temperature would be once they entered the valley. Guild leader, there seemed to be some people ahead. Minor Wind, who had used eagle eyes to observe their surroundings, suddenly reported as he pointed at the smoke-choked path ahead of them. People? Shifeng was astonished. Just getting to the Flame Demon's Valley was a difficult task for current players, not to mention fighting in such a harsh environment. Amazing. They're fighting a level 72 boss. And they're overwhelming it. Minor Wind exclaimed as he watched these players fight. Guild leader, some of our guild members are among them. Our guild? Oh. Shifeng was even more surprised to hear that his people were present. Following which, Minor Wind sent Shifeng a recording. Why are they here? As Shifeng watched the video, he discovered that there really were 0 wing members among the group. One of them was the elementalist Thoughtful Rain, and the other was the cleric Blue Bamboo. Both wore 0 Wing's 6-winged emblem. Currently, Thoughtful Rain was level 56, while Blue Bamboo was level 55. In terms of levels, these two could already contend with the various superpowers experts. Guild leader, what should we do? Aqua Rose asked. Normally, players would be on guard when they encountered others in the fields. After all, PKs were far from uncommon. If one were not careful, other players might even mug them. Furthermore, the unexpected party was engaged in a boss fight. They should be even more on guard. However, the Flame Demon's Valley only had one entrance. They couldn't just wait until the other party finished their raid. Moreover, they had already used their all-round devices, Elven Silver and Master Fire Resistance potions, all of which had time limits. Let's wait and watch them for now, Shifeng said after giving the matter some thought. Chapter 1839 in Neutral Races. Piles of large rocks decorated the scorching valley. Due to the constant screen of black smoke from within the valley, it was extremely difficult to examine the area with the naked eye. One would be fortunate if they could see up to 200 yards away. Even those with stronger physiques would only see an additional 20 or 30 yards. Only with skills like Eagle Eyes could players see up to 700 to 800 yards. While 700 or 800 yards might seem far, it was nothing to monsters in a level 70+ danger zone. These monsters could normally see up to 500 yards. Due to the level difference between these monsters and 0 Wings players, the monsters would have an easier time discovering them. If they were not careful, the monsters might even notice them from 800 yards away. Under Shifeng's lead, 0 Wings' team quickly moved to 200 yards away from Thoughtful Rain's team. Rocks and smoke obscured their position, so the other team would find it difficult to notice their presence. Isn't that Rain? Aqua Rose was a little surprised as she watched Thoughtful Rain in battle. Her combat standard has improved by quite a bit. Thoughtful Rain dealt with 3 level 70 Lord-ranked Flame Demon Guards, which moved alongside the boss monster by herself, yet despite being out-leveled and outnumbered, she faced the 3 lords on equal footing. She had thoroughly distracted the three flaming humanoids, allowing her teammates to focus on the boss. It was evident that her combat standard had already reached the refinement realm. However, Thoughtful Rain's teammates were even more surprising. None of these players were human but foreign races. They were either half-beastmen with tiger ears and tails or half-elves with snowy white skin and pointed ears. What is going on? They're not actually human? Fire Dance exclaimed in shock. Every player on Zero Wing's team was shocked. As far as they knew, it was only possible to play a human when starting the game. There weren't any other races to choose from. Although they had encountered demon players and monster players, they were transformations. Technically they still identified as human. However, the players on Thoughtful Rain's team were different. Their initial statistics showed that they weren't humans who could transform. Instead, their races identified as half-beastmen or half-elves. While Shifeng found the situation surprising as well, he did not find it particularly strange. Moreover, he finally understood why these other players were here. In God's domain, players were only allowed to play as human at the start of the game. There were no other racial options to choose from. However, after reaching level 30 and beyond, players could head to neutral races' habitats to complete conversion quests, becoming half-beastmen or half-elves. Although players would gain some racial abilities after becoming half-beastmen or half-elves, they'd abandon their identities as human and lose the protection of God's domain's ruling race. These players would find it far more difficult to move about on the continent and in the game. Not all kingdoms and empires permitted entry to neutral races. Only a very small number of countries did so. Even so, there were still many expert players that willingly converted. Neutral races' racial abilities were very tempting, and although these abilities wouldn't improve one's basic attributes directly, they would improve one's physical abilities. For example, half-beastmen generally gained more mobility, reaction speed, and perception. Half-beastmen were natural-born warriors. As for half-elves, they were magic's favored children. They would find magic-related tasks far easier than the other races. Both the half-beastmen and half-elf races also provided higher innate resistances. As a result, neutral players could survive and fight in maps with harsh environments, such as danger zones. In addition, like demon players, half-beastmen and half-elves were differentiated based on their bloodline purity. The purer one's bloodline, the stronger their racial abilities would be. In exchange for these benefits, not only would players face racial discrimination, but they'd also have a more difficult time upgrading their tiers. With the same combat standards and combat power, a human might be promoted to Tier 3, but a half-beastman or half-elf might only reach Tier 2. This was one of the main reasons that the human race oppressed the various neutral races. The human race had far more apex members than the neutral races. This was the law of equivalent exchange in God's domain, and it would be up to players to decide which path they would take. Those who were confident in their strength could definitely challenge the limitations neutral races faced. If they successfully broke past those limitations, they would no doubt become much stronger than human players of the same tier. After Shifeng's team observed these neutral players for some time, the level 72 Great Lord ranked Flame Demon Commander's HP finally fell to 50%. Suddenly, a level 56 half-elf female elementalist shouted, "Melee players pull back! Dodge the boss's team wipe skill." Hearing this half-elf's command, the 9 half-beastman players fighting the Flame Demon Commander darted back from the boss. The 6-meter-tall Flame Demon Commander roared. Towering pillars of fire rose from the ground around it, melting the earth until it was molten lava. In the blink of an eye, the monster had formed a field of lava void of life. As the lava field continued to expand, the half-elf elementalist used a Tier 2 ice-type curse, Ice River. The lava then stilled, cooling until only frozen dirt remained. The Flame Demon Commander was also frozen, becoming an ice sculpture. "Attack with everything you've got," the half-elf elementalist shouted. With the half-elf elementalist's command, everyone bombarded the level 72 Great Lord with their most powerful attacks, decreasing the Great Lord's HP much faster than before. Frightening damages appeared above the Great Lord's head, one after another. Even the weakest attacks dealt over -10,000 damage, whereas the stronger blows dealt over -20,000 damage. In 2 short minutes, the Flame Demon Commander's HP fell to 30%. Once it did, the Great Lord's flaming body split into balls of flame, forming miniature Flame Demon Commanders. There were 50 miniature versions of the Great Lord, and each one had half of the Flame Demon Commander's basic attributes. They were still stronger than the Lord-ranked Flame Demon Guards, but they only had 600,000 HP each. Despite so many miniature Flame Demon commanders, the half-beastmen and half-elves coped. Each player fought 2 or 3 copies and steadily shaved away the copy's HP. Once every miniature Flame Demon commander had died, the flames gathered and merged once more. In the blink of an eye, the real Flame Demon commander stood before the team. This time, however, it only had 10% of its HP remaining. It took less than 2 minutes for the team of neutral players to kill the Flame Demon commander. As the Great Lord's flaming body dissipated, it left behind 5 items and flaming wreckage. Even a large guild's main force would be awed by how fast these players had dealt with a level 72 Great Lord. After watching these neutral players slay the boss, a voice called out to Shifeng as he prepared to lead his team over to greet the other players. "You guys have been watching us fight for quite some time now. It's about time you show yourselves, don't you think?" The female half-elf elementalist asked coldly as she turned towards the rock Shifeng and the others hid behind. "If you refuse, we'll come to you." Hearing the female half-elf statement, the other half-beastmen and half-elves turned towards Zero Wings members with frosty expressions. Chapter 1840, No Need for Explanations. "Guild leader, it seems that we've been discovered," Aqua Rose said as she felt the killing intent radiating from the female half-elf elementalist. However, she did not reveal any signs of panic at being discovered. Instead, she calmly smiled and said, "It also seems that the other party doesn't appreciate our good intentions." "Forget it, since they don't, so be it," Shifeng said, shaking his head and laughing. "Since they've spoken, let's head over." Kill-stealing was a frequent occurrence in the fields. For such expert neutral players to come all the way to such a high-level danger zone, it was highly unlikely that they were just here to kill bosses. The only possibility he could think of was that these players were here for a high-ranked quest or had found a clue leading to one. Either way, they wouldn't like being discovered by other players. For example, Shifeng didn't want anyone to learn about his quest to unseal the Philosopher's Hand. If they did, it would definitely cause trouble for him and his guild. Even now, he hadn't told anyone about the quest, not even his teammates. Any players that had an important quest or were trying to pick one up would conceal their activities. When discovered, they'd greet the offending players with hostility. It wouldn't even be surprising if these players attacked without warning. Hence, to avoid a misunderstanding, Shifeng had decided to maintain his distance, hiding his team throughout the raid. First, he wanted to avoid unnecessary combat. Second, Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo were members of this neutral team. If Zero Wings members suddenly showed up in this deserted area, the team would suspect Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo of leaking information. Third, he didn't want others to know what Zero Wing was doing in the Flame Demon's Valley. However, the female half-elf elementalist's perception had exceeded Shifeng's expectations. He had never expected the woman to sense them 200 yards away despite her involvement in the intense battle. Even with his physique, he had barely seen the battle from this distance. The only other player that had seen the battle clearly was Minor Wind, who had activated Eagle Eyes. The other team's members had been busy with the fight, making it impossible to maintain Eagle Eyes. Hence, he hadn't expected to be discovered. However, since the team had noticed them, he had no choice but to reveal himself and see how events unfolded. Meanwhile, the half-beastmen and half-elves warily watched Shifeng's group approach. "Guild leader, our tracks have been discovered. Should we kill them?" A level 55 Tier 2 berserker, a half-beastman in armor and wielding a white bone spear, asked, lacing his words with killing intent. "Let's hear them out first. At the end of the day, this map is controlled by the human race. Moreover, we're already halfway through our quest. An interruption will only make it more difficult to complete," the female half-elf elementalist quietly responded. During the battle, she had discovered Shifeng's group, but she had remained silent about it to see what the other players intended at first. She had assumed that the team was here to cage steal, but even after the boss had died, Shifeng's group had been motionless. This proved that Shifeng's group had no designs on their loot. Even so, she couldn't let the other party follow them. After all, she had an important quest to complete. She could only expose the team and persuade them to leave. Of course, the decision had some risk. If negotiations soured, it was likely they would have to fight each other. If Shifeng's group insisted on following them, she would have to act. Her quest offered an extraordinary reward, which would qualitatively transform their guild. With this reward, it was entirely possible that their guild would instantly become as strong as a first-rate guild. As Shifeng's group increasingly closer to the female half-elf's team, Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo, who were busy with 3 flame demon guards, stared with wide eyes. Rain, aren't they from our guild? Even Vice Guild Leader Aqua and Commander Fire Dance are here, Blue Bamboo said, stupefied. What should we do? Will Big Sis Melody suspect us of leaking information? The team they had joined on this expedition to the Flame Demon's Valley for a quest was extremely important to Melody, the guild leader of Ninth Heaven. This quest could even determine the life or death of Melody's guild. Hence, the woman had repeatedly forbidden them from telling anyone about the quest. Neither she nor Thoughtful Rain had spoken a word of their actions, yet their guild members had shown up here. At this point, avoiding a misunderstanding was almost impossible. We don't have a choice. We have to explain to Big Sis Melody and hope that she understands. But this is really a terrible coincidence, Thoughtful Rain, who kept the 3 flame demon guards busy, said helplessly. Unfortunately, as Shifeng's group approached, Melody and the other Ninth Heaven members noticed the 6-winged emblem on these players' chests. A 6-winged emblem? Isn't that the same one that Rain and Blue wear? Could they be Zero Wings members? Guild leader, we haven't said anything about this operation to anyone. How could Zero Wings members be here? Could it be? Did Rain and Blue? I knew outsiders couldn't. Suddenly the half-beastmen and half-elves turned to Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo. Although they did not question the two directly, they watched the women with questioning gazes. Enough. I'll handle this. Melody roared as she shot her team members a chilling look. Let's find out why they're here first. Suddenly this team of neutral players heard a deep voice. I am Black Flame Zero Wings Guild Leader. My team and I have a task in the Flame Demon's Valley. May I ask you to remain here for some time? Once we're done, we'll invite you in. Shifeng's voice was sonorous, echoing throughout the valley. Moreover, his aura was imposing. He felt like an ancient behemoth that had just woken. Damn it, it's true. When Melody's team members heard Shifeng's statement, they glared at Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo with indignation. Meanwhile, Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo were at a loss for words. They felt as if any explanation would be useless. Guild leader, since they've come to steal our quest, we should kill them, one of the Tier 2 berserkers said, exuding killing intent. I want to see just how powerful Zero Wing truly is. They had more or less heard of Zero Wing. This guild, which had started with nothing, had gone on to take control of Star Moon Kingdom. The guild was powerful enough to rival a first-rate guild, many times stronger than Ninth Heaven. However, they didn't think that they'd lose to Zero Wing's experts in terms of individual combat standards. They had the innate advantage of half-beastmen and half-elves, which would be particularly prominent in PvP. Waving to her teammates for quiet, Melody turned to Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo. In a low tone she asked, I just want to ask one thing. Did you two leak our secret? Big Sis Melody, we didn't say anything about this, Thoughtful Rain insisted. Blue Bamboo nodded, repeated, firm resolution in her eyes. All right, I believe you, Melody said, revealing a gentle smile. She did not think that Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo would betray her trust. She then turned back to Shifeng and said, Hello, Guild Leader Black Flame. I am Melody, the Guild Leader of Ninth Heaven. May I know why we cannot enter? That way I'll understand what I should do. Although there was no arrogance in Melody's voice, her voice held no deference either. Rather, her tone contained questions and threats. Depending on Shifeng's explanation, she wouldn't shy from a battle to the death or mutual destruction. Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo tensed. The reason? Shifeng suddenly laughed. I'm afraid that you don't qualify to demand answers from me. Moreover, Zero Wing has never needed to explain itself. All you need to know is that you are not allowed entry for the moment. If you refuse, I'll simply treat you like the other monsters. Shifeng then swung Killing Ray at the flame demon guards chasing Thoughtful Rain, tearing the space before him. A golden lightning bolt struck one of the 3 lords from over 60 yards away. The powerful flame demon guards then fell to one knee, the strike leaving a deep gash in their flesh. All 3 lords were heavily injured. Meanwhile, a damage of over -100,000 appeared above the flame demon guards' heads. Among the 3 lords, one even suffered nearly -300,000 damage. But compared to Shifeng's damage, what truly surprised the other guild leader was his ability to land his attack against the 3 moving lords without harming Thoughtful Rain, despite being over 60 yards away. Moreover, Feng had sent his attack through the other team, striking the flame demon guards before they had been able to react. Feng's timing and skill usage were godlike. This stunned Melody and the Ninth Heaven members, who had planned to put up a fight. Without another word, Feng led his team into the Flame Demon's Valley, leaving the dumbstruck members of Ninth Heaven behind. Chapter 1841, Rich Danger Zone. Melody and her teammates only breathed a sigh of relief after Feng's group had vanished. Too strong. The strength and frightening aura Feng had displayed had been stifling. For a moment they even thought that they had already died. So, that is Rain and Blue's guild. How could such a powerful expert exist? When Ninth Heaven's members turned to thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo, who still fought the 3 flame demon guards, they watched the women with shock and fear. They had never realized that Zero Wing was so powerful. The racial talents they were so proud of were little more than a joke before Feng. Even thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo, who had thought that they understood their own guild, couldn't help but gape after witnessing Feng's attack. Not only had Feng's single attack alleviated the pressure they faced, but he had also shocked Ninth Heaven's experts, deterring them from attacking. Among the Ninth Heaven experts present, quite a few were even stronger than the two of them. This was especially true for Melody. Melody wore 3 pieces of epic equipment and had stronger combat standards than them, yet against Feng's attack, even she had failed to react. Melody also could not help but shake her head and smile bitterly as she looked at the 3 flame demon guards' wounds. She had intended on threatening Zero Wing and questioning Zero Wing's purpose in the Flame Demon's Valley. After all, both teams had roughly the same number of players. Even if their teams fought, she did not think that her team would lose. At worst, their teams would suffer mutual destruction. However, reality proved that her thoughts were laughable. Guild leader, what should we do? Are we going to give up just like that? A tall, robust Tier 2 Tigerman berserker asked. Before he had seen Feng's power, he had been confident in defeating Zero Wing's members, but after he understood one thing. He absolutely must not clash with Feng. He would only find his death if he did. He hadn't only come to that conclusion because of Feng's superior basic attributes, but also because of the technique the swordsman had displayed. Why should we give up? We've gone to great lengths to find this quest, and Flame Demon's Valley is so large. Do you really think that they have eyes in every corner of the valley? A Tier 2 female ranger carrying an icy, crystalline bow said, clicking her tongue. She had no intentions of giving up on their quest. Moreover, she refused to believe that Feng's group would notice them sneaking into the Flame Demon's Valley. Forget it. Let's just wait here, Melody said, shaking her head. I don't think that Zero Wing is here for our quest anyway. They must be here for something more important. Otherwise, with Zero Wing's strength, they wouldn't need to waste words on us. They could have simply gotten rid of us before entering the valley. Hearing Melody's decision, the other members nodded in agreement, seeing the logic in her words. It would have been much easier and safer just to get rid of them, rather than asking them to wait at the valley's entrance. They had just witnessed Feng's prowess personally, and they doubted that he'd need long to annihilate their team. If Feng wished it, he could have killed several of them with that attack, and they would have been powerless to do anything about it. We should also thank Rain and Blue. Large guilds generally dislike others following them during a large-scale operation. Generally they seal off the area. Even if they don't, they tend to get rid of any potential threats, yet Black Flame had simply forbidden us from entering the valley rather than kill us. Let's not stir up any more trouble, Melody explained. When large guilds were on an important mission, they definitely didn't show mercy. The fact that they were still alive was all thanks to thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo's membership in Zero Wing. If not for these 2 women, she didn't dare imagine what kind of outcome her team would have suffered. Upon hearing Melody's explanation, her teammates gave thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo grateful and apologetic looks. They now felt that their decision to invite the women on this mission had been a wise one. Otherwise, they would have likely died an unjust death at the entrance of the Flame Demon's Valley. This turn of events had also bewildered thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo, who still tried to figure out how to clear up the prior misunderstanding. A moment ago the team had been hostile towards them, but now their teammates seemed grateful and cordial. It felt like they had been dropped into hell before being thrown into heaven in the next moment. They had no idea how to react. Zero Wing is so strong, guild leader. And I've heard that Candlelight, the guild's trading firm, is doing quite well. Both Rain and Blue are Zero Wing's core members. If we can get acquainted with Black Flame through them and partner with Zero Wing, our guild's development in Forest City will definitely go more smoothly, the Tigerman Berserker quietly suggested as he looked at thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo. I get what you're trying to say. I'll ask them for their opinions later. However, I must say this, if they don't want to help us in that way or find it too difficult, you will let the matter rest. Melody nodded as she turned to the Tigerman Berserker in surprise. Previously, the Tigerman Berserker had been very opinionated about thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo's participation in this operation. She had never expected him to suggest that they cozy up to the women. The Tigerman Berserker nodded silently in response. Meanwhile, in the Flame Demon's Valley, Shifeng remained ignorant of the fact that his behavior had made thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo VIPs in Ninth Heaven. He simply led his team toward the Flame Demon's Valley's core region. Although the Flame Demon's Valley didn't house a lot of flame demons as a danger zone, its severe environment was incredibly uncomfortable for those who entered. Despite having equipped fire resistance items and drinking master flame resistance potions, Zero Wing's team sweltered in the heat. This prevented them from displaying their full strength. Although Shifeng had been very careful in selecting their path, due to Aqua Rose and the others' low levels, they still attracted flame demons. They had no choice but to engage in a few fights, slowing their advance considerably. However, killing the flame demons also granted a bountiful harvest. Although the monsters lacked equipment drops, they did drop enough fire-type materials to earn a small fortune. This was especially true for the flame crystal the flame demons dropped. These flame crystals could be turned into flame gemstones, which could be equipped on weapons. When equipped, the flame gemstone gave the weapons an additional 10% flame damage. This was an excellent item for players like them who struggled to increase their combat power. Unfortunately, the flame gemstones were consumable items, unlike ordinary attribute gemstones which could be used indefinitely. Even so, the flame gemstones were an excellent item. After advancing for around 4 hours, Zero Wing's members finally reached the Flame Demon's Valley's core. Shifeng then contacted Thoughtful Rain and notified her that her team could now enter the Flame Demon's Valley. To current players, the Flame Demon's Valley's core was absolutely off-limits, even for half-beastmen and half-elves. Without the all-round devices, elven silver, and sufficiently high fire resistance, players would die in a matter of seconds upon setting foot in this area. Hence, he was not worried that others would discover his activities. After another half an hour, Fire Dance, who scouted ahead, excitedly reported in the team chat, "Guild leader, I found something." "Something good?" Shifeng muttered, curious when he heard Fire Dance's trembling, excited voice. The Flame Demon's Valley was a danger zone. It had many valuable things to offer. She shouldn't have sounded so excited. "Guild leader, you won't guess what I've found. I actually found an vein," Fire Dance proudly proclaimed. Chapter 1842, Attributed or Vein. Upon hearing Fire Dance mention an vein, everyone's eyes glowed with excitement. Veins were extremely rare in God's domain and particularly in Starmoon Kingdom. This was because Starmoon Kingdom was a relatively balanced kingdom. While the kingdom had no lack of herbs, ores, wood and food materials, it did not specialize in any of these resources. Hence, veins were very rare in the kingdom. Whenever one was found, it would be highly contested over. "An vein? What type is it?" Shifeng asked curiously. He wasn't particularly surprised by the fact that an vein had appeared in the Flame Demon's Valley. After all, this was a mountainous region. It was also a danger zone, a map famed for abundant resources. However, although veins were generally quite valuable, they were also differentiated by rank. For example, the difference between a bronze vein and a magic crystal vein was like heaven and earth. Although a bronze vein could tempt ordinary large guilds, it wouldn't be particularly helpful to Zero Wing. At the very least, it wouldn't be occupying if it were in the Flame Demon's Valley. The Flame Demon's Valley was a danger zone and home to very dangerous monsters. The map's harsh environment would only make it even more difficult to mine the vein. Even super guilds had a hard time setting up mining operations in danger zones within kingdoms and empires, and the Flame Demon's Valley was both a neutral map and a danger zone. Normally, superpowers ignored veins in danger zones. The rewards simply weren't worth the effort. "A source fire vein," Fire Dance exclaimed. When Fire Dance reported the vein's identity, her teammates let out a gasp. In their opinion, finding a copper or mithril vein was already exciting, yet they had stumbled across a source fire vein. Source fire? Shifeng's heart raced upon hearing this. A source fire vein was a bona fide grade 2 vein. Unlike ordinary grade 2 veins, a source fire vein was also an attributed ore vein. It was extremely rare even among grade 2 veins. Normally, an ore vein didn't attributes just like how ores were normally unattributed. However, if an ore had an attribute, its price would increase by several fold. For example, frost steel ore was an ice-type ore. When using this type of ore to forge weapons, the weapons produced would deal additional frost damage. When used to produce equipment, the equipment would have additional ice resistance. This was why attributed ore veins were far more valuable than their non-attributed counterparts. Superpowers would even fight over a grade 3 attributed vein, not to mention a grade 2 vein. If the various superpowers found out about this source fire vein, they would do everything they could to acquire it. The vein might not be as valuable as a grade 1 vein, but it would greatly help their members when raiding dungeons or exploring new maps. Even if the price were great, they would pay it to secure the source fire vein. However, Shifeng had never heard of an attributed ore vein in the Flame Demon's Valley in the past, leaving him a little confused. Had such a vein existed, the Flame Demon's Valley would have been a battlefield for the various superpowers, rather than some obscure map that no one cared about. Send the coordinates. We'll head there immediately. Thinking up to this point, Shifeng wanted to verify the authenticity of the vein. If the source fire vein were real, it could help Zero Wing's rapid advance in both ship and weapon production. After Fire Dance relayed her current coordinates, Shifeng led the team, slowly approaching the assassin's location. Fire Dance was situated before a canyon that was surrounded by mountains and lava. The canyon was clear of black smoke, so visibility was excellent. Only, the terrain was extremely dangerous. There were also a large number of giant lava beasts in the area. Moreover, laying at the canyon's entrance was a gigantic, level 80 mythic ranked beast. Lava Hound Elemental Creature Mythic, level 80. HP 450, 000, 000/450, 000, Everyone felt their heads ache when they saw the two-headed lava hound guarding the canyon's entrance. However, they could clearly see a cave in the distance with some crimson ore around its entrance. This crimson ore was none other than Source Fire Oregon. It's actually real? Shifeng's eyes burned with desire as he gazed at the Source Fire Oregon. Although the vein seemed small, it was definitely a Source Fire vein. How unfortunate. There are too many lava monsters nearby. There's even a level 80 mythic monster guarding the canyon's entrance. We don't have a chance of securing the vein, Aqua Rose said, slightly frustrated as she looked at the cave entrance. With their current strength, they might be able to defeat level 60 mythic monsters, but a level 80 mythic ranked monster was still too difficult. Furthermore, they had to fight the lava creature in such an extreme environment. Under such circumstances, they wouldn't be able to defeat the lava hound even if they were level 80. This was because this was a danger zone. The monsters here had much higher combat standards than monsters in a normal map. Including the frightening attributes of a mythic monster, they had no hope against the level 80 lava hound unless they returned at level 90 or 100. Lava creatures were different from ordinary monsters. Players would be subjected to the burning heat radiating from the monster's body if they got close to it. Even if players had sufficiently high fire resistance to avoid taking any damage, they'd still feel the searing pain. This pain would significantly affect players' combat power and prevent them from fighting at their best. However, this was not the most frightening aspect about lava creatures. Lava creatures' corrosive ability was far more dangerous. Weapons and equipment would rapidly lose durability when they came into contact with these creatures. If the items lost all durability mid-battle, they'd be permanently lost. Because of this, players tried to avoid lava monsters as much as possible. Meanwhile, every monster in the canyon was a lava creature. Trying to clear out these monsters long-term would be hell. Not only would they fail to acquire the vein, but they would also sacrifice a large number of weapons and equipment. If they tried to construct a mining base here, a large number of monsters would assault the base during its construction. If the mining base were destroyed, all resources they had invested would be lost. On the off chance that they managed to construct a mining base here, there was also the problem of manpower. Zero Wing simply couldn't afford to station a lot of players here. This was the Flame Demon's Valley's core. Its harsh environment could easily kill the guild's players. Players needed sufficiently high fire resistance to survive here. They were only able to explore this area because they were fully equipped in fire resistance equipment and had consumed master fire resistance potions. If any other player stood in their place right now, the extreme temperatures would have long since claimed their lives. The rest of the team agreed with Aqua Rose's assessment, a little disappointed. While the source fire vein before them was a priceless treasure, they could only afford to view it from afar. Meanwhile, as Shifeng examined the roaming lava monsters, he fell deep into thought. Not many people knew the true value of an attributed or vein in God's domain yet. However, he did. The source fire vein would be particularly valuable to the current Zero Wing. Not only did the vein produce source fire ore which could be used to increase the guild's overall combat power by a significant margin, but the vein also produced the super rare byproduct, flame source crystals. Flame source crystals were incredibly useful to master alchemists, but they were also one of the main materials to produce the epic set equipment, Broken Steel, a set exclusive to his Blade Saint class. Lava creatures? After carefully observing the terrain and the wandering lava monsters, Shifeng said, "While it would be impossible to set up a mining base here, it isn't entirely impossible to harvest the ore." Guild leader, can we really mine here? Anticipation burned in Aqua Rose's eyes as she looked at Shifeng. Nowadays, fire resistance weapons and equipment were in high demand since the various large guilds had realized how necessary these items were to their development. If Zero Wing could harvest the source fire vein, it would definitely increase the guild's development speed. Given enough time, Zero Wing's members wouldn't be limited to operating near Silverwing town. They could freely explore the Ore Empire and cross swords with the Ore Empire's evil god's temple. They had long since grown tired of the evil god's temple's antics by this point. Chapter 1843, Titan's Might. When Zero Wing's members heard that it was possible to mine the source fire vein, their eyes glowed with excitement. They all had a certain understanding of ore veins, so they knew that the source fire vein was a grade 2 ore vein. This meant that there was a certain chance to obtain magic crystals when mining it. This was something the various large guilds sorely lacked right now, especially Zero Wing. Currently, Zero Wing was expanding and recruiting more members. This meant that the guild needed to nurture far more players. Although Zero Wing had training locations like the Battle Arena, the guild members still had to train in the Divine Colosseum's Trial Tower. Zero Wing's Battle Arena simply couldn't accommodate enough people. The Trial Tower also provided comprehensive training, testing players' limits. If Zero Wing could acquire a large number of magic crystals, the guild would be able to transform the new recruits into usable combat power. Right now, the majority of Zero Wing's members wouldn't be useful in large-scale combat. This was also why Zero Wing's members couldn't venture far from Silverwing town, and the guild couldn't develop properly in the Ore Empire. We'll have to give it a try before we'll know if it's truly possible. I can only say that we have around a 30% success rate, Shifeng said, shaking his head. He wasn't particularly confident in his plan. While it was common knowledge that lava monsters were extremely difficult to deal with, not many knew that lava monsters also had obvious weaknesses: ice and water-type attacks. In addition, an ice or water-type environment would dull the lava monsters' reactions to an extreme. Once the lava creatures' reactions dulled, they'd become far easier to deal with. However, lava monsters filled the canyon before them. In addition, they were nowhere near the monsters' levels. If they tried to lure a single lava monster, they'd likely attract a large group instead. They also had to worry about the level 80 mythic lava hound. Moreover, this was the Flame Demon's Valley. The environment was extremely hot. Even after equipping fire resistance equipment and drinking master fire resistance potions, the heat still affected them considerably, and they couldn't fully exhibit their combat powers. Picking a fight with the lava hound would be suicide. Hence, he wasn't confident in success. A 30% success rate? It's so high. Some hope is better than none at all. Guild leader, just tell us what you need us to do. When they heard their chance of success, the team grew excited rather than disappointed. Even the various superpowers weren't likely to occupy the source fire vein, but if Zero Wing could, it could grow into a super first-rate guild within a short time. Zero Wing would then be able to compete for dominance over God's domain. It would no longer be limited to its status as a kingdom's #1 guild. Aqua Rose, who had once been an honorary elder in the veteran first-rate guild Twilight Echo, had never thought that Zero Wing would one day have a chance of becoming a super first-rate guild. Despite so many years of development, Twilight Echo had never reached the point where it had the potential of becoming a super first-rate guild, yet Zero Wing already had. Alright, since everyone is in agreement, Aqua and those with the Sea God's legacy, ready your spells. You should have learned quite a few water-type spells. As for the remaining elementalists, prepare to use ice-type spells. Try to use as many AoE spells as possible. I don't need you all to attack. I just need you to transform this canyon into a world of ice and water. As long as you can change the environment, the lava monsters will weaken and become much easier to deal with. If you succeed, we'll have a chance of getting the vein. Cola, Turtledove, and Yi Wumian, once Aqua and the others begin, you three need to do everything you can to lure the monsters away from the canyon's entrance. Cola, you'll be responsible for tanking the lava hound. All you need to do is lure it away. Everyone else will use the ice and water type magic scrolls I'll distribute in a moment. I don't need you to buy a lot of time. 5 or 6 minutes will be enough. No matter what happens, do not use Power of Darkness. We'll need it later. When Shifeng finished explaining his plan, his teammate gulped as they glanced at the 8-meter-tall lava hound. They had no confidence of defeating the mythic monster. The other level 70+ lava monsters shouldn't be an issue, but distracting a level 80 mythic monster for 5 or 6 minutes would be a massive challenge. An unsuppressed level 80 mythic monster would most likely kill them with a single slap, and they weren't allowed to use their berserk skills. Surprisingly, however, Cola brimmed with fighting spirit. If nobody has any problems, let's begin, Shifeng said. After scouting the terrain for about 10 minutes, Aqua Rose and the other casters finally decided on their positions. Meanwhile, after Cola, Turtledove, and Yi Wumian prepared to pull every monster's aggro in the canyon. Good. Let's begin. Shifeng commanded once everyone was in position. Immediately, Aqua Rose and the others started to chant incantations and draw runes, drawing a large amount of water and ice-type mana towards them. The non-magical class players also activated their water and ice-type magic scrolls. The flow of mana soon attracted the attention of nearby monsters. These monsters instantly searched for the change's source. However, before these lava monsters discovered Aqua Rose and her companions' locations, AoE spells began to descend. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, icicles and waterfalls rained down from the top of the canyon walls. As the streams of ice and water reached the bottom of the canyon, the molten lava vaporized the ice and water, filling the canyon with a dense mist. At the same time, the canyon's temperature began to decrease. Unfortunately, Aqua Rose and the other spells were only temporary. Their spells couldn't stop the lava from spewing out of the ground and canyon walls. Damn it! Why is there so much lava? If we can't stop it, changing the environment will be impossible, Blackie said, anxiety filling his heart as he watched water and ice become steam. If they failed to change the environment, the lava monsters would easily annihilate them. They shouldn't even dream of securing the source fire vein. Seeing the swarm of lava monsters charge up the canyon, Cola and the other MTs began to grow nervous. These level 70+ lava monsters hadn't weakened in the slightest. It seems the effects are quite good. Everything is coming along just as I expected. Shifeng smiled as he watched the rising steam. He then took out the ancient weather book and activated weather control. He hadn't actually expected Aqua Rose and the others to change the environment here by themselves. After all, only powerful domain skills could accomplish such a feat. Only a fool would try to change an area's environment with ordinary AoE spells. While the ancient weather book could alter an area's weather, it was too difficult to do so in such an inferno. It would take a very long time for the ancient weather book to alter this environment enough to impact the lava monsters. Meanwhile, the lava hound would have killed the entire team several times. Hence, he needed Aqua Rose and the others to create enough steam in the valley to hasten the ancient weather book's alteration process. Suddenly, a powerful storm began to brew above the canyon, dark clouds forming in the sky. After 5 seconds, rain began to fall, showering the lava monsters. As the rainwater covered their bodies, the lava monstress cried out in pain. Their body temperatures rapidly began to cool. Not only did the lava monsters' movement speed begin to decrease, but they also seemed sluggish. Whoa! The lava hound raged as the rain drenched its body, its howl so powerful that it even pushed away the descending rainwater and rubble on the ground. The lava hound then charged for Shifeng, swiping a paw as it pounced on the swordsman. "You're not getting past me." When the lava hound ignored him, Kola activated Titan's domain and ran at the beast with his shield raised. Boom. Sparks scattered when the lava hound's nails scratched against Kola's Titan guard. The lava hound's gigantic body came to an abrupt halt. Meanwhile, Kola only stumbled 3 steps backward, a damage exceeding -1,000 appearing above his head. To Kola, who had over 90,000 HP, this damage was practically negligible. So strong. Kola can actually tank that thing by himself. Everyone was surprised to see Kola barely harmed. This was a level 80 mythic monster they were talking about. Although the rain had somewhat weakened the lava hound, it was a mythic monster, yet Kola had received its attack effortlessly without any help. Even Shifeng was shocked by how little damage Kola had taken. He finally understood just how frightening a fragmented legendary shield was. By the looks of it, the Guardian Knight should have no problems tanking the lava hound by himself even if he didn't use Titan's domain. Shifeng also dismissed the worry that plagued his heart. He then activated Gale domain and flew toward the cave entrance in the distance. He quickly reached the mine, realizing that its entrance was so small that barely 3 people shoulder to shoulder would be able to enter at the same time. The instant Shifeng set foot in the mine, a series of system notifications reached his ears. Moreover, he wasn't the only person to receive the system notifications. Everyone in the Flame Demon's Valley had received them. Chapter 1844, Underground Country. System, congratulations. You have discovered the Fire God's ancient land. Flame Demon's Valley Region System Announcement. A player has triggered the new expansion pack, Underground Country, and activated the Primordial Taboo Seal. Players may enter the Underground Country in 10 days. The system announcement repeated 3 times, the system's indifferent voice echoing in everyone's minds for quite some time. Underground Country? Shifeng was stunned. Fire God's ancient land. He had never heard of the Flame Demon's Valley containing some kind of underground country during his previous life. He only knew that the Fire Demon's Valley's monsters had a high drop rate for source fire or in magic crystals, and a few superpowers had fought fiercely over the area. However, this new expansion pack had never been triggered in the past. Although he had never heard of the Fire God's ancient land before, he was very familiar with ancient lands. Any location that was considered an ancient land had existed before the Great Destruction. Only, these locations had disappeared from the public eye after the Great Destruction. Meanwhile, these ancient lands were rumored to have been blessed by ancient gods, which was why they had survived for so long. But as time passed, these ancient lands had become relics. Among the various ancient lands that had been discovered during Shifeng's life, some contained items that had even been famous during ancient times. These items had all been highly sought after by the various superpowers. Hence, the various superpowers had fought desperately to claim any discovered ancient lands in the past. Shifeng had never thought that the source fire vein they had found was actually an entrance to the Fire God's ancient land. This rendered Shifeng speechless. Now that the system announcement had been made, the underground country in the Flame Demon's Valley would be exposed sooner or later. The source fire vein would definitely be discovered as well. Meanwhile, the Flame Demon's Valley was tens of thousands of miles away from Starmoon Kingdom. If the Fire Dragon Empire's superpowers wanted to claim the vein, he'd be powerless to stop them. Fortunately, it wasn't easy to reach the Flame Demon's Valley's core. Players would need high enough fire resistance to do so. Triggering this new expansion pack also excited Zero Wings members. Although they didn't know what the underground country was, they knew that this expansion pack represented a huge opportunity. Every kingdom and empire had its own specialty products, and no player had ever explored this underground country yet. This meant that they could monopolize the underground country's specialty products. Depending on the item's value, they could make a fortune by reselling them. Although Zero Wings members were excited about the new expansion pack, when they returned their attention to the horrific number of approaching monsters, they suppressed their excitement and focused on their enemies. As for Shifeng, after a moment of surprise, he quickly charged into the source fire vein and started building a marker for a teleportation magic array. Trying to get all of his team members into the Flame Demon's Valley's core had already been incredibly difficult, not to mention sending an army into the valley. No guild in God's domain would be able to do so at this stage of the game, so it was impossible to mine this source fire vein long term. However, while this task might be impossible for other guilds, the same was not true for Zero Wing. As long as he set up a teleportation marker, he could transport players via teleportation array. Not only would it save his players a lot of travel time, but they could also avoid unnecessary battles in the Flame Demon's Valley. Unfortunately, due to the massive distance between teleportation arrays, the magic crystal cost would be considerable. But compared to the source fire vein's value, the teleportation fees were almost negligible. Aside from the fact that magic crystals could drop from the source fire vein, the source fire ore was incredibly valuable. It also had a small chance of dropping flame source crystals. Meanwhile, in a hot, sandy area in the Flame Demon's Valley's inner region, Melody and her team worked on clearing out the monsters in an ancient ruin. When Shifeng entered the source fire vein, they too had heard the regional announcement regarding the new expansion pack. Amazing. Someone actually triggered a new expansion pack in the Flame Demon's Valley. That should be Zero Wing's doing. Is it the matter they mentioned earlier? Although I don't know what the underground country is, it must have a lot of valuable items. Our ninth heaven has struck gold. The only other guild that should be in the Flame Demon's Valley is Zero Wing. Our two guilds should be the only ones who know about this underground country. We'll make a fortune by reselling the items from it. Excitement flashed in the eyes of the Ninth Heaven's members when they heard the system announcement. Traveling into human kingdoms and empires was intensely difficult for neutral races, so any items they purchased in Forest City were far above market price. Now that they had discovered the underground country, they could sell its unique items in Forest City. They'd be able to make a fortune and rapidly develop their guild. So this is Zero Wing's strength? Melody revealed a bitter smile when she read the system announcement. She had been smug and satisfied because she had accepted a high-ranked quest with an extraordinary reward. In contrast, Zero Wing had triggered a new expansion pack in the Flame Demon's Valley. The difference between them was immense. Previously, she had still suspected Zero Wing of targeting Ninth Heaven. But now her suspicions were laughable. To Zero Wing, her high-ranked quest wasn't likely worth a second glance. While Ninth Heaven's members envied Zero Wing for activating a new expansion pack, Shifeng frantically set up the teleportation array's marker. Setting up a teleportation marker was not an easy task. Players needed a considerable understanding of magic arrays to succeed. The procedures were extremely complex, and normally, a player would need a lot of time to set up the marker and connect it to a teleportation array. However, to Shifeng, who was adept in drawing advanced magic arrays, this task was easier. He swiftly etched magic arrays on one crystal after another before placing the crystals on a large magic array he had carved into the ground. Very quickly, the mana in the mine started to gather in the magic array. Shifeng could feel the mine's dense mana begin to dwindle. Whoa! Suddenly, Shifeng heard a furious howl from outside of the mine, echoing on the mine's stone walls. Guild leader trouble? The lava hound went berserk and is charging towards you. It's ignoring aggro completely. Aqua Rose shouted in the team chat when she saw the enraged lava hound rush back to the canyon. To current players, a berserk level 80 mythic monster was an absolute nightmare. Cola had tried to stop the lava hound with his shield but had instantly lost over 30,000 HP when the boss had responded with an angry swipe. The lava hound's strength was terrifying. If anyone else had taken that attack, they would have likely died instantly. As soon as Aqua Rose fell silent, the lava hound arrived before the mine's entrance. Fortunately, the mine entrance was too small for the lava hound, so the boss couldn't get in. Seeing this, Aqua Rose and Cola breathed a sigh of relief. However, something then happened that stupefied Zero Wing's members. The gigantic lava hound split into 3 miniature copies. Each copy was still a level 80 mythic monster, but they did have slightly lower basic attributes. Before Zero Wing's members could react, the 3 lava hounds charged into the mine. Hurry! Hurry up! Shifeng could already hear rapidly approaching footsteps. It was obvious that the lava hound was almost to him. Meanwhile, he only needed to insert one last crystal into the ground to set the spatial coordinates. Unfortunately, the loading bar, which had swiftly filled before, felt extremely slow to Shifeng. It was only 70% full. While conducting the merging process, Shifeng couldn't do anything. He couldn't even activate a skill. When the loading bar reached 90%, 3 1-meter-tall lava hounds appeared before Shifeng. Despicable mortal. You dare violate this sacred ground. You'll pay for your crimes with your soul. The three lava hounds spoke in the human language, rage flaring in their eyes as they spat three scorching white beams at Sure Feng. Like lasers, the white beams vaporized everything in their path. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.